Hey, welcome to the show. BallBusters, episode 79. 79 episodes, man. Been a long time. As usual, if you'd like to support this channel, there are PayPal and Patreon links in the info box below. See who we got in Discord, see if they piled in late. Throw this up. Let's see what we got. Discord, shout out.
Hello, hello.
Where's my
I'm
partner?
Hey.
Where's the distinguished Nathan Oakley at? He was first on the video. Oh, there he is. He comes right on time. That's right. Fashionably late. What's up, sir?
Me? I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you? Oh, you
Very
said,
well indeed.
oh, you said you were good. Sorry. This is a little bit redundant.
Yes, indeed. How are you? How's Arwen?
I'm doing okay right now.
A little under the weather a little bit. I don't know why.
Fascinating. I had linguine. You?
We don't discuss food on BallBusters, man. That's for QE Live.
Thank God.
Got some brand new 10-inch woofers.
Uh-oh.
Dogs?
Dogs!
You want to know what I'm eating?
No.
Woofers?
Okay.
Dogs? I don't know what you're eating. You tell me.
Snert met rookworst.
Oh, brother.
Doesn't even sound good.
No.
That's
It's
disgusting.
freaking delicious. But you got to learn how to pronounce it first.
Okay, we're all super keen to do that.
Let's go right now.
It's
Like-
not that stinky food that Sleeping Warrior talked about that one time. You can't even open a can. It stinks so bad.
No.
No, that's not what he's talking about. I know what you're talking about.
No,
though. I
it's
can't
kind of
think
like
either.
split pea soup with like sausage
That's
of a
a,
certain type.
it's a
Smoked
nasty combination, man.
Linda Blair's favorite.
I was thinking about this earlier. What were we going to talk about on BallBusters? You know, that's of the time. It's my concerns that we're at the tip of the spear. We're at the pinnacle of flat Earth arguments, and people just don't seem to take it seriously. They want to talk about their dinner and stuff. I mean, I don't know what we're going to do about this, but maybe that should be the subject.
Yeah, because that's what do you want us to talk about? It's over, right? We could go on and on and on, and I'm going to. I'd like to thank Protothad, that lion surat numpty dipshit, for telling Jedi mind tricking all the BallTARDs, because they're all doing it. I got it this morning that there are no right angled triangles or right triangles in celestial navigation. They're all saying it now, man. I love it. I absolutely. It's like whack-a-mole. it's shooting pregnant hippos in a fishbowl. I love it.
A statement that attacks celestial navigation at its core. That's not got anything to do with me. I feel completely detached from their response, if I'm honest. I don't know about you.
I don't know what to say. It is. I've heard some stupid things in the past. Let's just take it back 14, 15 years, particularly with the BallTARDs, where they're just evolutionists with a sphere on their head. But this one, I don't know. I'm dumbfounded. There's nothing there. It's a train wreck just waiting to happen. As soon as you say that, right? All the third grade geometry graduates everywhere they're baffled.
There's no crossover though. This is the problem. So we've been pushed down the ranks of YouTube so far that there aren't any normies watching this. So while you're saying, well, this would be obvious to those particular students, I agree. But they're not our audience. Our audience are the people that are the Walking Dead zombies that have just had their bus blown up and are still walking towards you with body parts hanging off of them, not realizing they're dead. That's what we've got to contend with. And that's seemingly who receives our information. And that's why I'm saying that there's not enough enthusiasm level for it. In my opinion, this is the pinnacle of the argument thus far. And I said this on my show, and I didn't mean it to have any disrespect to you. I know you've done several top 5 flat Earth proofs, but I never liked any of them. Now, I'm going to go back at some point and go through them and try and reassess why I didn't like them at the time. Now, I didn't voice that. And it's nothing to do with their logical consistency or their ability to prove the Earth is flat. It's just preference, literally just preference.
Sure.
But why, I don't know at this stage, but I will assess that. But this one I do like. I like it for its simplicity. I like it for its inability to let the opponent beg the question in the first instance. There's a lot of aspects to this particular flat Earth proof. It is absolutely a flat Earth proof. I like the fact that when the opponent attacks it, they don't attack me or flat Earth. They actually attack celestial navigation.
Yes.
I like that a lot.
I agree with you. I wouldn't go so far as to say the other proofs aren't proofs. I think they're as equally deadly. But like you said, there's no more simpler proof than this. It's very quick. And I've said that in the beginning. That's why it's number 1 to me. In fact, we got 5 or 6 number 1s. But this one is the easiest. It's the easiest to defend. It's the easiest to claim. It's the easiest to prove. And like I said, 3rd grade geometry graduates, I agree with you. That's why it's on my site as number 1.
I think we've got a nice top 3 now. So I won't do the dun 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 dun.
Love
it. Coming in at number 3, moving up 1, pushing Coriolis out at number 4. We've got, what is it again? Gas pressure without a container. Dun, 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 dun. And down 1 at number 2, it's the Black Swan. If the Earth was a sphere with a radius of 3959, then every distance to horizon could be no more than 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet. And the distance to horizon in the Black Swan imagery is beyond the geometric limitations of a sphere Earth radius 3959. Therefore, the Earth's not a sphere. Dun, 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 dun. And a new entry straight in at number 1. It's the elevation angle argument. You can't acquire an elevation angle from a sphere Earth. Dun, 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 dun.
Then
Dun, 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 dun.
I like the last part of that where you delay it. Yeah.
Yeah, we got a new top 3. So number 4 was part of the top 3, and it's my least favourite argument and the one people commend me for being the most competent on, which is Coriolis effect. And I dislike the argument. I've always disliked it. I might be good at it. It doesn't matter. I hate it. Being competent, so it doesn't mean you like it.
Yeah.
Plenty of people that are really good at their jobs and hate them.
Yeah.
Well, that's Coriolis to me. It's just a convoluted gaggle. It's the absolute opposite of the elevation angle argument. It's the total opposite. You can lose an audience member in double-speak convolution in Coriolis almost before you've got through the introduction to what you're about to talk about. You could lose half the audience.
Yep.
Just explaining what Coriolis is, and you've got an inertial and a non-inertial reference frame, and with you positioned on the non-inertial reference frame, non-inertial actually meaning spinning, looking at something that's in a inertial reference frame that technically might not be moving at all, but seems like it's moving as you turn beneath it on the non-inertial turning reference frame. We all clear about what Coriolis effect is? Great, let's move on to how that applies to Earth so we can debunk it. Well, this is nice and clean. Super clean.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you this question. If you were coming and talking to somebody new that's searching out, hey, listen, I've heard of this flat Earth stuff. What would be the first thing you would say?
Say celestial navigation proves the Earth is flat.
You would?
While the maps. Yeah, I would. It'd be the first thing out of my mouth now.
Okay.
Yeah. If someone said, you're a flat earther, how'd you prove Earth's flat? Celestial navigation can only work on a flat Earth. That's why all your maps are flat.
Fair enough. Let's go through it. I'd like to hear what people have to say about this. Go ahead, Arwen. What would you, if you found somebody new, Somebody come up and ask you a question. I'm sure that happens on your show all the time. Sorry, you're too early for me, man. I can't. It's just way too early. I can't do that.
What?
Your show is too early for me, man. Early bird, yeah, that's not gonna happen. But
Oh, right. Yeah, no worries about that.
thanks.
Just get your breakfast.
Yeah, oh, it's well before breakfast. I'm still in dreamland. So if somebody new came up to you, and because you know all the arguments, you've been out here for a long time, what would you use as your first argument or your introduction into flat Earth?
What depends on the argument they're going to bring forth, but
Let's say they're not bringing any arguments. They're just, hey, I'm interested in flat Earth. I've been hearing this stuff out here. What is your best evidence for flat Earth? Now, remember, he's new, not seasoned. Go ahead.
right. Well, the first thing I do naturally, whether it's online, and I really size them up as a newbie because I do make a lot of mistakes sometimes. I think they're newbies, or I think they're trolls, right? Because trolls kind of like mimic them to try to get under your skin. So, but if I do pick up on it, the first thing I do is basically first try to size them up by letting them ask questions, and then depending on their question, you can kind of get a look at where they're at, and and if they have questions themselves, well, then I just go with that.
Jeez, man, gas pressure out of container. Come on, just give an answer. Holy shoot.
No, but I want to size up first, like, for example, how dependent on dreamscapes they are.
Now
Right?
listen,
Are they dwelling within like globe fantasy sci-fi a lot?
you're
And then
answering.
just
You're
how
answering.
fragile
Hold on.
are they?
Hold on. You're answering another question. I already set up the stage for you. I said, listen, this is a newbie coming into the argument. And he wants to know your best flat Earth proof. So that's already established. See, now it's up to you. What would you choose as your number one?
Okay, well then they're posing a challenge, right?
Yep.
Well, I just start out saying the three basics. Earth is flat, stationary, and contained.
Okay.
And then basically hope that they will inquire about that, and then I'll start
You're
explaining.
missing the point. As
Yeah.
supported by this, as supported by X is what he's asking you. Yes, you can make those statements, but they're baseless assertions until you provide something. And he's saying, what would you provide to support that? As supported by, what would Darwin's choice be?
He said it indirectly. He said the Earth is flat, the Earth is stationary and contained. So his arguments would probably go the sextant, coriolis,
Definitely.
and gas pressure. Correct?
Right? And I could even, like, depending on where they're at, how good they are, like, for example, with math, try to insert, like, hey, there's things wrong with the math. They make you presuppose things, but they never deliver proof.
Sure.
Right? It all depends on where they're at. And if they're not very involved yet, it's not all clouded with disinformation from trolls yet.
Sure.
And you can still tap into that early clarity.
Very, very insightful. Although you didn't answer my question outright, that's pretty insightful. I guess I can live with that. Neil.
I'm still going to go with gas pressure out of container.
Yeah, me
That's,
too.
That's what I'm going to go with.
Not
Yeah.
flat Earth proof. Not a flat Earth proof.
Oh, that's right. It's Earth debunking. You're absolutely right. Then I have to go to the elevation angle.
Yeah, that's
But
true.
a newbie's not going to understand that. Look at yesterday.
That's true. However, I have to agree with Neil. It takes the whole heliocentric religion and pummels it, so it softens up the ground for my next one. But you are correct. Technically, you're right.
I'm not disagreeing with him. I always argue gas pressure without a container. Up until now, that would have been my opener.
Right. Okay. Well, we have the Adam Meakin, who's been really quiet down there on the bottom, who snuck in late.
Evening, guys. I'm just asleep. It's my son's birthday, so we've had the family over. He's buggered off already, so I might be in and out tonight. But yeah, better family over. But I would go with. I'm not joining the consensus. I had this in this order, and there's only the tweak, as Nathan says, but it's about how do you deal with a newbie, as opposed to the nuance of flat Earth proof. How would I deal with a newbie? I'd deal with gas pressure without a container, black swan in great detail, and then I would go to the sextant to put the icing on the cake. And like I said, black swan and sextant work so well together. But like you guys, for me, the number one ball destroyer, I think fundamentally is gas pressure without a container. It was the one I used with the physicists on the Flat Earth tour when these guys announced themselves as physicists. And as Alvin was alluding to, it's horses for courses in a way. But if you're dealing with somebody that's intellectual or even pseudo-intellectual, that's a great place to start, because it, like the Black Swan, it uses the fundamentals of their premises for you to win. They've got to deny their own supposed understanding and become an anti-flat earther to even progress in the argument. So yeah, gas pressure without a container for me.
That's a very good answer. Thanks, Adam.
Also got John. John's
Agreed.
just jumped in.
Yep.
What's the question? I missed it.
You have a new person coming into the argument, and he, like I said, he's brand new. He hasn't been tarnished with anything. He's asking questions, and he asks you, what's your best flat earth proof? What are you leading out with? You can do top 3 or top 4 or whatever, but that's the question.
But if they're new to the subject, you're probably going to have to wedge the idea of space and you're going to have to wedge that out of their mind, or they're going to keep on putting the flat earth in a false dichotomy model. So yeah, I agree with Adam.
Good.
All depends on how they preface their objection. So the opener is really all that matters, because where it goes from there is typically going to involve one of the other arguments, isn't it? So you might start off with gas pressure without a container. And frankly, I think I'm going to have to change my mind because you've changed the positioning of the question, which is if it was with a newbie.
Yep.
If you're just coming across somebody who's never heard of the subject and they're just going to launch into subject. And yeah, I think I'd probably open with gas pressure without a container, because most people's image is Superman image of a sphere Earth from space that they've never had. They've never had that position. That's Matt Powerland's original version of this argument. You've never had and will never have that position looking back at Earth from space. You can't acquire it. Or we've taken it one step further and said, well, no one can acquire it. That place isn't real to acquire the imagery from. If you open with that, you're going to find yourself going, yeah, but from the ground. In other words, they hand wave the fact that space is fake and move straight to the horizon, talking about it blocking boats and buildings and stuff. So you don't know where you're going to go.
Yep, I agree. Hey, shout out to Kiefer Green. Get an arrow or maybe 2. That's about 1, but thanks, Kiefer. Appreciate that, sir.
I still stand by my strategy though, because yeah, it all depends on, do they know what they're getting into? Are they looking for trouble? What's their attitude, right? Because if they're just like really blank slate that just happen to wander in, you could literally just shatter their entire universe and they weren't prepared for it.
Yeah.
Right? They didn't even, if they don't see the challenge, if they're like truly honestly ignorant about it, like you call that innocent, then yeah, I wouldn't just like right away smash at it like that with like space is fake, right? They might be really dwelling in that a lot and need it for their own stability. So that's why always like size them up first. Don't just use a standardized tactic.
It's interesting, Owen. You said that space is fake. None of us, and I think maybe 5 years ago, we might have said moon landings were fake, this, that, and the other. No one mentioned NASA's bullshittery. If you listen to everybody's focused on a very specific, a detailed argument. We're no longer saying whether a photo is valid or not. We're talking about the knowledge of gas behavior, or how we measure and define an angle, or the geometrics of the ball in relation to the black swan and how it has to have an impact. are all very. Our responses now are certainly, if I think 5 years ago, how I would have answered that question, it would have been to attack with weak arguments. No longer now. We're just presenting logical arguments, Black Swan, or demonstrating science, or demonstrating even like in the week, where the use of logic and stuff in terms of whether we're moving. I still like citing Aries failure and the likes, but I think the standard of what we have to present to newbies now is no longer, I believe, look, come on this journey with me. We're actually giving them solid stuff that's constructed, as I was saying earlier, constructed within modern science. We've embraced it, having re-understood it, and now that we take that to it, it's very, very, very difficult to argue against when, I said, just gas pressure without a container. When you bring that argument and you bring it reasonably, calmly, with the scientific understanding and the natural law understanding, it's very difficult for anybody who, like I said, is purporting to have science on their side, as they used to say, to do anything than, as I'm doing now, stutter, put simply, as a retort, you know?
And beyond discussion and debate, it's gone to, this isn't agree, disagree, this is gas behavior. This isn't disagree or agree, this is celestial navigation. Now, you can argue that the Black Swan argument, potentially, you can try and argue your way around the logical consistency. But in the most part, we're taking it to arguments that aren't agree, disagree. Just as is. Hey, Brian.
Hey, Nathan. Hey, Kiwi. Hey, Adam. Hey, Neil, Arwen, and everyone else.
Hello.
Can I give my big stupid opinion?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go then. Definitely airplanes. And I'll tell you why. Because the average everyday person will either be able to learn about airplanes easily, angle of attack and all them kind of things, or they've already been in one, or they're likely to be in one, or they might know someone who's been in one. They also have, besides the angle of attack argument and the fact that they fly pitch up, I also have the maths and all the rest of it if they need all that nonsense, but they won't need all that nonsense because they can use the accelerometer on their phone and accelerometer app to show that the direction of down is not changing to go to a center. They also have the gas pressure argument within the cabin because they have to keep the cabin of where the passengers are. They have to keep that at a certain level, so the internal pressure doesn't cause structural damage because of the differential in pressure between the inside and the outside when they're only 6 miles up. But also you can't have it too low because everyone will go unconscious. And they also use sextants from airplanes, or at least they used to. So there's a load of arguments just within the airplane alone.
I agree.
So I think
I see. So what you're saying is an aeroplane, in quotes, is all-encompassing in terms of all of these arguments, in terms of what it does, how it functions, how it operates. It's got to be operating on a flat, non-rotating plane. And some of the tools they utilize a flat, non-rotating plane to establish things like positioning. So when you look at all aspects of air travel, they can only function on a flat plane, and you can argue the toss about all of those different aspects with all of the arguments that we've just put forward as our favourites. So I like it, Brian, in terms of a subject matter to encompass all of these arguments. Air travel, brilliant. I love it.
It's the same thing again, though, isn't it? We've taken something. I remember in the old days we had all those flights, and we've owned it. And what Brian's just summarised there is the number of different arguments just within airplanes that we could take, and batter gravity, this, that, all of those things. But again, all of the power that we've got in those arguments comes from the knowledge that comes from those industries. Yeah, comes from the science, comes from the technology. All of the arguments we have are based in those facts that, once again, they can't disagree with. It's all when we present this stuff to them, it's showing them how all the understanding we have contradicts how it could work on a ball. And all of these details, it's black swan, sextants, aeroplanes, and all these things, gas pressure, that all of them are showing that the knowledge that mankind has accrued before we were flat earthers, that we all agree with, flat or ball, all of it contradicts how it would work if it was a ball. And that's the beautiful thing for me. We're empowered with what they used to, when we first entered this, you know, we're now empowered with what they used to use. I've got the whole body of science. No, we've got it. If it had a body, we'd be the ones that had it now behind us. Not that it has. Hence the slight backtrack there.
Very good. Very good, Adam. Shout out to Chris Chitors, Fight the Good Fight. Mars Rover, laughing out loud. Great show, guys. Stay frosty. We will. I agree with mostly everyone. When practically speaking, because when I deal with people not online, I'm talking about with people one-on-one, the first argument I go to is flight. So I have to agree with Brian because I just do it naturally, right? So it's a good point now that I'm thinking about it.
Well, there's five different arguments within the one argument. There's the angle of attack argument, which is number one. They need to have that for to hold the whole lift. And I always use commercial airliners at cruising altitude. I don't go into jet fighters and stuff like that because they do all kinds of acrobatics. So the angle of attack for lift, that's one. Number two is their pitch angle. So the pitch of the nose, that's two. Number three is the gas pressure argument that can be used within the airplane. Number four is the devastating accelerometer argument. And then number five is the rotation argument. So you have five different ones within that one thing. That's why I like that the best for a normal person.
Yeah, I can see it. Cool.
Such a vast, stark difference to when I got here, and foolishly just got led by all of the controlled opposition narratives, the maps and models, and the crap arguments that went with them. The horizon rises to eye level. What?
Yep.
Now we're talking about, dip corrections for sextants. In other words, contained within the current proof of flat Earth, that would be the elevation angle argument, detailing the compensation for the inaccuracy of the horizon when you're raised above the deck. The angle that's opened up, diffraction limits have been talked about before we've even got there. To understand the optics of the thing you're dealing with. Right now, we've had, I've forgotten the guy's name now, Flat Earth Data, I think, came on and told us about how Earth curve and Earth curve refraction calculations have been described back in the 1800s without any reference to Earth curve. Right? Mm-hmm. Rewind to 2015, water's flat. What? No. Water at rest will find and maintain its level. That would be the 2017 updated version of the crap argument you get handed when you get here, or I got handed when I got here. The arguments are basically rubbish when you look back on them. We don't feel that we're spinning. What?
Yeah.
That's our argument. We don't feel anything.
Yeah, they were. Yeah. I know where you're going with this. It's pretty funny if you'd listen to those shows, not only your shows, but what was being talked about. You're right. You're exactly right. You're right on point. It's like the difference between preschool and PhDs.
Yeah. I mean, kind of bugs me when people on the show, I'm not going to mention any names, Bill, moan about other shows that aren't at the tip of the spear, still having quote unquote 2015 style arguments. Like, it's one of them, innit? Other than moaning about how we could disseminate our information to the greater masses, that's at the behest of the platform, isn't it? We've already been designated fringe. So, where we would have been growing and disseminating our information to the masses, the anti-flat earthers have replaced us in the algorithm, like quite directly, one for one replaced us. You go, okay, well, that's never going to happen then. So the powers that should not be, if there are any, have already decided in Congress that we are to be designated in such a fashion that the Joe blogs we talked about at the beginning of the show that would just see this and roll their eyes when they hear about no triangles in triangulation or whatever nonsense our opponents are putting forward, that would have a very adverse effect. So in other words, we've got to be censored. And being censored means that you're only going to be confronted with the people who know which corner you've been shoved into.
Now, let me defend myself. That's not the point. When an argument is destroyed and they keep bringing it up again like nothing ever happened, it gets freaking irritating. It happened 5 times on your show today in the chat, Nathan. Are you kidding me? You say black swan, they say black bull swan. Are you joking me? That gets a little frustrating.
I have something on that.
Hold on
You
one
need
second.
to.
Hold on one second. Shout outs. You guys are feeling frosty today, man, with the super chats. I'm telling you, my wife is loving you. Shout out to James Mays. Hello to the panel. Great show, guys. Thanks, James. Welcome back, man. Theo Megawordy. He didn't say anything, but thanks, guys, for the super chats, man. I know it's rough out there, let me tell you. I'm feeling it myself. That's all I got to say about that, but I really appreciate it. My wife loves it. Thank you very much. Go ahead, guys.
You forgot one.
I'll put a double stamp on that because somebody pointed it out to me in my comments, and it's something that you feel stupid when you're out there e-begging, going, smash the super chat. It's really hard at the moment. I'm doing really badly, financially. Obviously, the show's doing really well, but the support that you get is directly proportional to how well you're doing as a small YouTuber. Someone in the comments was like, yeah, that's because it's tough for everyone at the moment. I'm like, yeah, I should really have a bit more empathy rather than just e-begging, which is what you've just done. So I just want to put appreciation to the fact that you've pointed out, how hard it is for everyone else, rather than what I was doing in the last few days, which is e-begging for my own selfish self and just saying, God, it's really hard for me. Anyway,
Yeah, it's just basic. Just to bring it on this topic just for a short time. It's friggin' rough, man. Gas prices, just basic needs right now. They're going through the friggin' roof.
Thank Joe Biden.
It's pretty rough out there, Nathan. So take that into. I don't know how it's going over where in your neck of the woods, but it's pretty bad right now.
I think it's the same pretty much everywhere.
So,
It's
but
the damn Russians.
I'm not putting any blame on anything. I'm just telling you the way it is, and it's a heavy pinch. And we're all feeling it, and we're all going to suffer for it. Of course, I'm not going to go into it because I could go on and on about it. But like I said, thanks, guys. And there we got with Theo Megawordy again. How many guess who this is? This is his statement. How many curvilinear tangents does a circle have?
Love it.
Who is that?
Virus.
No, who is that?
It's not Virus, man. He brings it up all the time on my show, on your show. You don't know who that is. Citation Police, man.
Oh, okay. Perfect. It's an excellent parody.
Yeah. Go ahead, John. Sorry I interrupted you. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I was going to bring something up. It's an older argument about bottom-up obstruction at the horizon. The whole thing with that is, how do you calculate that bottom-up obstruction without a flat plane?
You're going to derive the sphere Earth model with an R value to claim a geometric horizon debunked by the black swan by way of elevation angle measurements from a flat plane in the first instance. So you can't make the assertion of bottom-up obstruction at the geometric horizon debunked by the black swan unless you've asserted the model by way of a flat Earth angle measurement in the first place. You're going to need a flat plane to make that bottom-up obstruction claim, is what John's driving at.
Yeah, but they still don't listen. You say that, and they just don't listen. So what I did now is I just timed them out.
Also, what you're saying, Neil, is there's a distance, between again, I'm going to refer to these this whole show, I can tell. The normies described by QE at the beginning of the show that would hear these arguments, no triangle intrigue or whatever else that's stupid that they say, and they really would raise their eyebrows. But there's a detachment between us and them, isn't there, Neil? So what are you left with? You're left with the Walking Dead example that I gave earlier. They've been blown up in a bus by us with these arguments. And what happens? You just pile out the bus on fire with no legs, the stumps dragging the way towards you, like nothing's happened. What can you do, Neil?
Time
Shoot
them
in
out.
the head. They still keep coming though. It's nuts, but that's where we're at.
Yeah.
We're literally dealing only with the Walking Dead.
That think they're intellectuals and have a coherent argument. That's the really hilarious part. It's I don't know what to say about it.
Well, my wife's here with me, and she said my wife, she's here with me, and she says the argument that sticks out most to her, because she recently become a flat earther, I guess. Is the plane argument, the using the plane.
Yeah, using flights. Yep.
Yeah, but she said number one for her was the Bible.
Yes. Listen, there's no doubt about that, right? But it depends. It comes down to epistemological preferences. Christians, we can use that. That's my number one too, obviously. But I was just kind of couching it secularly. But I agree with her. Yeah.
That would be an ecumenical argument, though, wouldn't it?
I didn't catch that. Say that one more time.
I think it's a Father Ted quote.
You're kind of low. Is that on purpose?
Father Jack gets told to respond to the higher up priests that would be an ecumenical argument, I think is how it's pronounced.
Is it ecumenical? Really?
One.
Yeah, I'm not going to go on. That's your word. I got to go look that. Hey, I got to look that word up. Hold on, Fiber. You guys are getting into the friggin' super chat. This is right on time, man. You just don't know it. Fiber Oats, thanks, everybody. Heck of a few months. You got that right. Thanks, man. Really appreciate it. My wife's going to appreciate it even more. I'll tell you that right now. It's going to be a happy afternoon. You guys rock. Thanks, man. Go ahead, Nathan. You were saying ecumenical. How you spell that?
I don't know. It might be that I've got the pronunciation wrong, because it's an Irish drunk priest who doesn't know anything about the priesthood that stumbled into being a priest, being told what to say when the higher ups come round, and he says it in a drunk, slurred Irish accent. So I can't recall the word exactly.
It's Father Ted, and so whenever he's discussing with the priests and they're talking about the Bible or anything to do with how the church runs, and he hasn't got a Scooby-Doo what he's on about because he doesn't really know what he's doing, he goes, how that would be an ecumenical matter.
Ecumenical. It's ECUMENICAL. Pertaining to the whole Christian church, promoting or fostering Christian unity throughout the world. Ecumenical. Promoting or tending toward worldwide Christian unity or cooperation. Influence, application, you got it. Yep.
That's why it's a good word, because the definition is so long and all-encompassing that it can refer to basically anything when a Christian reference is used.
Right, sure, yeah.
It's a total cop-out, and the way Ted's using it is he's saying it's not decided. It's something for people above me to make a judgment upon. So you would have an ecumenical council to decide whatever. So that's the point of reference. He's like pretending he's intelligent by referencing other more intelligent people to make that decision for him. It's a bit like the ballers, isn't it?
It's kind of like being asked something in this arena and pretend clowning your way through it, and then making a statement like, well, that would be a philosophical question though, wouldn't it? So that you hope everyone around you goes, oh, yes. Very droll.
Speaking of pretender clowns, that you don't know that is kind of a segue into our discussion today. Remember what that was supposed to be?
It's fallacies. It's a very specific fallacy, though, is it not?
We're gonna get into a lot of pretender clown issues with fallacies, but this one, does this one have a direct? Yeah, this one is direct. So we want to jump on into this, don't we? I think we left off on ad hominem. So without any objections, I'll head in so we can get done with the presentation sometime this year. Is that okay?
No objections. I'm good. Everyone got it up on live stream. If you're watching in the Discord server, just go to the live stream and press mute.
Yeah, I'll leave it up there for a couple seconds because I know it's a little bit delayed. So ad hominem, like I said, was the last one. We're definitely into logical fallacies here, and hopefully this will open up some people's eyes to what they're hearing on the circuit and how people are using these things. How would you say? They don't know what they mean, and they just right? But we're going to take a look at what these actually mean. And like I said, maybe a light bulb will turn on and maybe make you a little better listener, or at least help you focus and say, hey, let me listen to what's actually going on here. How am I getting duped by either side? Right? So we're going to start off with one. This is one of these fallacies that are butchered. It appears to me, because I hear it all the time, and I don't think people actually know what it means. So we'll go with appeal to authority fallacy. Like I said, this is from Nizkor. I don't think Nizkor. I'm sorry, Nizkor. I don't think. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I know. I think, was it me coming off mute by accident?
Yes. Oh, okay. We're good. So Nizkor, I don't think they're actually a place anymore, but that's all right. They had this out there many, many years ago, and I'll back it up here in a few seconds. So an appeal to authority fallacy occurs when the authority in question is not a legitimate authority on the subject. Hopefully that sinks in. Let's get a little bit more detailed. So this is utm.edu. You appeal to authority if you back up your reasoning by saying that it is supported by what some authority says on the subject. Most reasoning of this kind is not fallacious. It's really important. Most reasoning of this kind is not fallacious, and much of our knowledge properly comes from listening to authorities. However, appealing to authority as a reason to believe something is fallacious whenever the authority appealed to is not really an authority in this particular subject. Does everyone get that? Everyone get that? Hopefully everyone got that. You're going to hear it echoed down here by Stanford. The ad verecundium fallacy. Ooh. Love that Latin. Concerns appeals to authority or expertise. Fundamentally, the fallacy involves accepting as evidence for a proposition the pronouncement of someone who is taken to be an authority but is not really an authority. This can happen when non-expert pretender clowns parade as experts in a field in which they have no special competence. See it now, everyone? Give you an example. Fallacy. Dr. Craig Venter maintains that refrigerators violate the second law of thermodynamics. If you're appealing to him in this particular subject area, then that's an appeal to authority fallacy. What's not a fallacy? Dr. Craig Venter maintains the genetic code is the software of life. That's not a fallacy because Dr. Craig Venter is a geneticist.
Got it.
So, hold on. Almost done with this one, then you can all jump in. If an appeal to authority fallacy was merely testimony from some authority, then every subject matter expert witness brought into a court to testify could legitimately be objected to by each side or either side for an appeal to authority fallacy. Hopefully everyone got that. Any comments, questions on this one?
You want to go, Neil? I've got something, but go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that we've been getting it wrong then.
I don't know about we.
I was going to say, no.
I heard it a lot of times when people just say it, and it's not because the guy's not an expert matter.
People hear it and take it literally. So I'm going to use one that's going to be slightly controversial, right? So if I'm saying that space is a certain way, and they say, well, someone challenges me, and I say, okay, here's my citation from NASA describing how they say NASA is, and someone accuses me of an appeal to authority. Like, but they're the subject matter expert on space. If I'm going to reference space, they're going to be the person I'm going to reference in terms of their description of it, because they're the subject matter expert. It might be I'm using them as a hostile witness. This is how they say space is. To call that an appeal to authority is idiotic, because you're referencing a subject matter expert. And we had an appeal to authority on the show yesterday, day before yesterday. Mars came on, we're talking about celestial navigation. He said, George Orwell said that all these methods of celestial navigation work on a sphere. Like, is George Orwell a celestial navigator? Is he in any way involved in the process of celestial navigation? No. So the fact that he has detailed this specific method and said it works on a globe isn't relevant. That's an appeal to authority fallacy. It might be an authority on some things, but he certainly isn't an authority on celestial navigation. But to appeal to him without actually knowing why George Orwell said that they all work on a sphere, which is besides the point, is an appeal to authority fallacy. Likewise, if you want me to dumb it down one step further, the Billy Madison example. He's in a classroom with a load of students, having been only educated by his dumb mother. And when asked why alligators are angry, he's told that they've got all those teeth and no toothbrush. When the professor at the front of the class is trying to explain to the class that the medulla oblongata is the reason why those alligators are so aggressive, he explains to the teacher that no, Mama told me that they're angry because they've got all those teeth and no toothbrush. Everybody laughs. Why? Because it's an appeal to authority fallacy. Mother is the authority to the son. No question about that. Is she the authority on alligators just because she's the authority in the household? Absolutely not.
Got it.
Anything else on this one? Alrighty then. This one's pretty cut and dry, although most people don't catch it. This is an argument or appeal to ignorance fallacy. It's defined as an argument for or against a proposition on the basis of a lack of evidence for or against it. Sometimes this will catch you by surprise. You know something's wrong, but you can't put your finger on it. It's probably an appeal to ignorance fallacy. I'll give you an example. Dark matter is created by, I always use this one. Dark matter is created by invisible three-toed gnomes storing pixie dust in a black hole behind the Crab Nebula. And then I challenge you, can you disprove it? Because if you can't, therefore it's true, right? You inherently know something. There's the rooster or a fox in the hen house, right? And the rooster's in there too. Another example, moon gravity is responsible for ocean tides on the Earth. The challenge? Scientifically validate your claim. Response? How else would you explain it? That's a classic argument from ignorance fallacy. So, anything on this one?
Yeah, I think you've got your bits mixed up.
Go on, Adam, you go first.
I think you've got your lines mixed up. Moon gravity is caused by three-toed gnomes throwing pixie dust into a black hole behind a Crab Nebula. Point being, yeah, it's nonsense.
They missed off the appeal to authority. Missed off the argument from ignorance bit.
The bit I want to throw was just what I've just been cheeky to Phil saying, do you want to join? But all of these things kind of highlight the comment that I just want to read. Fallacy is the escape route so flat earthers can avoid reality. For example, pretending satellites are not orbiting Earth, even though they are, and see them moving 10 times faster than an F-16 fighter. And there's 2 points. Let's discuss the fallacy that Phil's put up. But what's always important to me is look at the response from the and I'm not saying ballers here, anti-flat earthers. They're now saying that recognition of fallacy is an escape route so flat earthers can avoid reality. I would suggest the complete opposite, Phil. Denial of fallacy is where you have to go, isn't it? To deny the understanding of what fallacy is, its nuances, is where you're left to do, to have to deny that, maintain that you're on a ball, mate. It's kind of sad what you type in text now. It's very telling. Sorry for interrupting. It's just it's like I say, what they say now. You always say, John, let them speak, and it's so telling now. You know, after the age of the sexton, it should be let the age of the baller anti-flat earthers speak, because they do the work for us. Listen to them. Shocking. Sorry.
Go ahead, Nathan.
I don't know where to go now because Adam's right, and I could go there or point out that you started off by saying, "Oh, this fallacy slips a lot of people by." So I almost didn't say anything because I still try and catch my own panel out with that particular fallacy. So I don't know how much I should detail. At the same token, what Adam said, I agree with. Other than focus one step before, when someone talks about logical fallacy, one step after logic. Whereas I don't think, was it Phil? Did you say it was Phil Bell you were referencing, Adam?
Yes, mate. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think he understands what logic is, then understand what an absence or an abuse of logic or a misappropriation of logic is, i.e. logical fallacy. Because he's focused on that without realizing what logical consistency is. That's how it sounds to me, at least. I don't know if you agree, QE. Say, to appeal to someone's lack of good logic and formulation of a fallacy is a get out. That to me says that person who's stating that doesn't understand what good logic is, because they wouldn't say it if they did.
Precisely.
It's just desperation. Maybe you two are better at this than me. I'm terrible to pull the actual definitions of the fallacies, but just take what he's took to attack us with after saying fallacy is the escape route so flat earthers can avoid reality. He then says, we are pretending that satellites are not orbiting Earth, even though we can see them moving 10 times faster than an F-16 fighter. We're talking about fallacies. You two guys want to have a go at that? Because
Orbits are begging the question fallacy. So you want to start there? That was the first thing you said.
First of all, he's projecting. That's number one. He's in fantasy world.
Is it an affirming the consequent?
I don't really listen to anything Bellin has to say, to be perfectly honest with you. I really don't.
I'm sure you
I agree.
I'm sure go. 5 or 6, wouldn't you? Right. But the point being, he's just attacked us in one way, and this is why I'm so happy. It's brilliant. Even when they type, they attack us in one way, and then just provide the biggest pile of fallacy to support their model. It's almost like they want to lose. Do you know what I mean? They're actually giving you good fodder to chew on.
All jitsu.
Yeah. Well done, Neil.
Nope.
Thanks.
So yeah, he is a veteran member of the BallJitsuit club. There's no doubt about it. So what do BallJitsuits do?
Bash themselves in the face with their own argument.
No, they defend the arguments with their faces.
This Phil Bell thing reminds me doubly of Tim Osman. First thing being a logical fallacy is better than nothing. Well, that's the implication in what Phil said, isn't it?
Yes.
If I've got a logical fallacy and you just call it on its logical fallacy and show out it's a logical fallacy, well, that's just your get out of jail free because logical fallacy is better than nothing, right?
Yep.
It's very Tim Osman-esque.
Yeah, it's implicit with it. Yeah. All right. So you definitely segued correctly into the next one because you called it out as orbiting is a begging the question fallacy. So that's what we're going with now. So circular reasoning or begging the question fallacy occurs when the premises include the claim that the conclusion is true or directly or indirectly, very important, assume the conclusion is true. So the poster child example, and Nathan always brings it up, is McWest's Earth curve calculator gives accurate representations of the Earth's curve. Well, when the Earth's curve is being questioned, that's begging the question. So it's another round and round. What comes around goes around. I'll tell you why. Why? It's a fallacy. Jeez. In response to geodetic surveying from Earth curvature. Another example. Here's Craig, fight the tight shirt or fat the fat girth, whatever you like to use. Example. If we are measuring a tangent, the response was, what tangent? Craig? Whichever tangent your eye line is creating. Response? That's a begging the question fallacy. A tangent is a straight line or a plane that touches a curve or a curved surface. You see it, folks? At a point, but if extended, does not cross it at that point. There you go. So those are two flagship examples of begging the question. There are so many of them. You'll hear them carpet bomb barraged by BallTARDs. This is one of the most popular ones. Anything on this one? No. Good. I like it. We're rolling. So let's go in. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, for other people, actually, but I didn't know if anybody else wanted to go before me.
Go ahead.
I thought everyone would have loads to say on begging the question. It's the most commonly used fallacy. I mean, I've even put on record that at one stage I said 100% of the claims of a sphere Earth would require you beg the question of a sphere Earth. Now, I was wrong. And I'm glad to be proven wrong because that's the elevation angle argument. You've got to start with a flat Earth with that argument. Beautiful. But most of the time you'll find quotes of me saying, I'm pretty sure 99.9% of the time you'll have to beg the question of a sphere Earth if you're going to claim a sphere Earth. I'm getting my shock that nobody else said anything at the end of that fallacy out of the way before.
I was being polite, Nathan. John's there, and I wanted to bring his kitchen up. And we've done a lot of mathematics with the knowledge that we know that John's kitchen floor is flat, so that we can use the angles with surety. But what we did then was beg the question that John's kitchen floor is curved, and we used those measurements that we'd taken from a flat surface to calculate how bent it was. And I know people were being flippant here, but this really is one of the prettiest things I think of irony or parody I've seen in a while, because it really does highlight what they're doing in everything. When we go to the sextant celestial navigation, how you interpret numbers, all begging the question that the way you interpret these figures is to beg the question that the reason for variance is the curvature of something that you've previously measured flat.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, Adam, but it's a weird situation, isn't it? Because we're having to go through 5 steps with the anti-flat earthers to get to the stage where they can beg the question.
That's out of kindness.
Typically, that's not the case. I mean, yeah, I'm glad you focused on the elevation angle argument, because not having to beg the question is the reason why it's not 99.9% of the time anymore. You know, that percentage is going to drop vastly over the coming years, because how are you going to get through the elevation angle argument without starting with a flat plane, unless you don't get hung up on the flat plane that you've got to measure first, as we've been told in the last couple of weeks? You know, in the question step is much later on in this particular game. But the fallacy itself is, I think, as much as I hate to admit it, better exemplified by Phil in the chat because of his assumptions of orbits. Right? If everything's falling around a sphere Earth, why are we assuming that? Isn't that the thing you would want to be proving in this instance? What if orbits? If everything falling around a sphere Earth is what he's saying. Let's all assume everything's falling around sphere Earth. We're all clear. Based on that premise that we've all accepted, because that's the thing I'm trying to prove and I'm begging the question of, they're moving at X rate. You're like, what? Hold on a second. Why am I assuming these things are falling around a sphere Earth again? Oh, because you begged the question, haven't you? Right? That's what Phil can do. I like to point that out to him in chat. Don't I, Phil? I need to beg for me, don't I, Phil? I'll be pointing that out in the chat next time I see you, as soon as you beg, which you will pretty quickly. You all do.
I'm glad you're having fun. Yeah, it's a lot of fun catching these guys. Shout out to, like I said, we got more super chats. Whiskey Shaman. He says it is impossible to determine expert status without either understanding the subject at a comparable level as the expert or to beg the question.
Or to beg the question.
Yeah.
What does he mean? Contextually, I don't want to put him down because it's a super chat. Thank you very much for your support, given the long lecture I gave about the pinch earlier and how grateful we should be.
Yeah,
Extra grateful.
he's assuming he's putting it out there as assuming the very thing they're attempting to prove. Not they're attempting to prove. They're attempting to prove he's a subject matter expert. So everyone has to assume that. Unfortunately, in like court cases and stuff, that your credentials and your experience come at the forefront because most of the jury and the people around, like if it's DNA evidence, they don't have a clue, right? So I'm sure the judge and the court have a certain level. I'm not a lawyer. Have a certain level, like a benchmark that it has to go above that, and both parties have to agree. That's prosecution and the defense. Although I'm not a lawyer, however, I did sleep in a Holiday Inn Express last night.
Is this in relation to appeal to authority we're talking here?
It could, yeah, yes.
Okay, so I'm an expert in a field, yeah? And that comes with the qualification. That is the expert in the field. If we're going to talk about, look, in my case, tablets, yeah, then you could refer to me as an expert in the field. It's not an appeal to authority, that, is it? Just an actual authority.
Yes. There is also a bit of confusion I've boarded up, Adam, that is worth qualifying when it comes to an appeal to authority. So let's say somebody has not employed the appeal to authority fallacy and their opponent has challenged them incorrectly on citing an expert in a particular field to back their argument. It doesn't necessarily make their argument correct. Citation doesn't make the argument correct, if that makes sense. So even if there is an incorrect assertion that, well, you've appealed to somebody who knows a lot about medicine in this particular instance, is qualified and doing it in the field, but that's just an appeal to authority, it's like, yeah, that's not a fallacy in this instance. You're just misunderstanding the fallacy, and he's a subject matter expert. However, he's still wrong, and so are you, because... And then you have to present your reasoning behind why the person making the claim in the first instance and their citation, in this case you, subject matter expert, are wrong. Because subject matter experts doesn't mean that everything they say is completely infallible. It isn't. That's the argument, and that's what normally gets focused on, and then segued with citations that seemingly back the argument. And because they're from a subject matter expert, suddenly they're oh so holy and must be accepted on the spot. Not necessarily the case either, but it does require a little bit of explanation, because I gave intentionally the example of NASA earlier, saying that I personally am appealing to NASA as a subject matter expert when detailing an aspect of space. Right? Everybody in the argument says, oh, you're appealing to authority. No, I'm not. They're a subject matter expert. NASA are the expert when it comes to space, not an appeal to authority. However, if my opponent then points out that, well, they're a subject matter expert in an area that doesn't exist. It's a second law of thermodynamics violation when you talk about outer space, which is what NASA are a subject matter expert in. They've immediately eroded all credibility to anything I've referenced about space because they've debunked space and the subject matter expert and my claim all in one go. Make sense?
Yeah. Yep. But you're using the expert, and in most cases, for me, in a Socratic way. So, if we're going to talk about space, well, okay, space, what is it? Let's have a subject matter expert on space in the heliocentric model define what it is for us to then destroy after we've done it. So it's not a point of I agree with their worldview or philosophical point. It's a point of using it to define something so you can move the argument forward. So what is space? It's the vacuum next to gas pressure without containment. Lovely. Right. Now I'll go ahead and destroy it. Or they're points to reference for me more than anything. If you can actually use a subject matter expert, doesn't mean, like you say, you have to agree with them. And often we're attacking them, but it's the point of reference for the two sides to agree on, if you see what I mean. Now, that's why you would use them.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Using a hostile witness is one of the most beautiful things ever. QE taught me this. Why? Well, because the Dumbo that thinks an appeal to authority is going to be useful when you're actually referencing a subject matter expert. If your example is NASA, it's their subject matter expert eroding their nonsense ideas of what to claim if they're going to shout appeal to authority because you've got an authority that's an expert. Right, so that deals with that little problem. Then you've got the establish what space actually is in this example, right? Because they might very well be disagreeing with their own rhetoric because they're anti-flat earthers. So let's get it pegged down by your own source, what they say as an expert basis. Then you take them to their own reference, their own citation, their own subject matter expert for the very thing that's going to destroy the thing they're claiming. In this case, gas pressure. Let's see what NASA have got to say about gas pressure. And then you show them their own guru describing the problem and how it's demolished, all within a nice little package. It's come from them. Beautiful.
You two guys having fun? No,
A little bit.
don't comment. You don't need to comment. All right, cool. Next one's, like I said, I'll wait for a couple seconds for you guys to catch up to it. We're going to do two deductive logic syllogisms. I mean, they're very popular, modus ponens and modus tollens. We're also going to go into the corruption of each because they have a flip side, each of them, to where there actually is fallacies based on them. This is formal fallacies, formal logical fallacies. Form is the form that you see here. If P, then Q, P, therefore Q. You have to have your P's and Q's together. Really funny one here. In this, as soon as I seen this, I remember an argument by Rufy, the numpty dipshit. He was calling his modus ponens, the one that I started off many years ago as my flagship example, trying to show what a modus ponens is. You know, if heat, then water or boil. You know that one, right? Because it's really easy, man. This is simple logic, right? But numpty dipshit Rufy called the modus ponens and affirming the consequent fallacy. So it goes, if P, then Q, P, therefore Q. That's a perfect deductive syllogism, or deductive syllogism. Sorry about that. So if heat, P, then will cause water to boil. So P, heat, therefore causes water to boil. He must have said it 3 times in a row and said, that's an affirming the consequent formological fallacy. What a numpty dipshit, right? I called him out on a number of times. Of course, he'll never admit to it, right? I got him recorded. Just see the numpty clips, the numpty from down under, and you'll get a perfect example of this. It just reminded it. Sorry, I digress. Go ahead.
Ask about that.
Good.
If you formulate it correctly as an affirming the consequent, right? So if you take if heat then water boiling therefore heat.
Mm-hmm.
Does it actually still work out as a logical fallacy?
Say that one more time.
If you take it and reverse the effect to be the P statement, you said he actually rattled off modus ponens 3 times, right?
Yes.
I get that bit, just so you don't interrupt and say, no, he was actually saying, if heat, then water boiling. If heat, then water boiling. If heat, then water boiling. You know, he keeps saying the modus ponens bit, the logical consistency, in other words. But if he actually rearranged it into if P, then Q, Q, therefore P, would it still actually not make sense to be called a fallacy? Therefore, if you rearrange it, you've got if heat, then water boiling, therefore heat. Is that actually wrong?
Yes.
Calling.
Yes, we're
No.
gonna. The corruption of that is the affirming the consequent form of logical fallacy, because other things can make it boil.
But
Gotcha.
ultimately, at a quantum level, you do require heat. You can manipulate other factors.
I was going to go there. That's where I was going.
Unless you're above, you can't achieve any of the premises within the ponens either. Above 0 Kelvin, none of it works. So it
It's
only
always going
works
to be part
with
of the
heat.
triangle. That's what I was going to drive at. In other words, even if you rearrange it into a form, is a logical fallacy, but the statement isn't wrong.
The form could be right, and the argument could be invalid.
I'm saying it's the other way around. The form is wrong, but the argument is still valid. In other words, it doesn't qualify as a logical fallacy, even if you rearrange the form to be a logical fallacy. It's not an incorrect statement to call wrong in the first place.
That's because they're natural laws, and therefore you can wrap it which way up, ponens, tonens, whatever. The truth of the natural law is always accepted within ponens, whichever. So it will always do true because the point of reference is natural law.
You two guys love these things, man.
Just a little bit.
Let's get to the corruption, and then we'll get to some examples below that you guys will like. The corruption of this is very simple. It's affirming the consequent form of logical fallacy. You see the difference, right? The P's and Q's are switched. So if P, then Q, Q, therefore P. So that's the form that they take, right? Modus tollens. If P, then Q, not Q, therefore not P. You guys are well aware of this one. This is used with the black swan argument. The corruption, its twisted little sister fallacy, is denying the antecedent. If P, then Q, not P, therefore not Q. It's just based on form, right? You're switching up your P's and Q's. So you got to be really careful, right? Let's get some examples of these guys. Affirming the
If they're
consequent.
buried together,
Oh, here we go. Go ahead.
if they're buried together, then they exist together.
Hey, wait,
not
yeah, we're
buried.
going to get to that. Just relax. Affirming the consequent form of logic. Like I said, I highlighted form, right? Because that's what it's based on. Form. These are form. P's and Q's. That's why they're called formal. Not because you're wearing a suit and tie. M. Scott Beach. What a numpty dipshit. All right, anyway. Affirming the consequent form of logical fallacy, right? If, like I said above, if P, then Q, Q, therefore P. So here's some examples. If evolution is true, P, then insert any Darwinian grab bag post hoc observations, fossils, homology, similarity, genetic variation, and others, Q. We observe post hoc observation Q, therefore evolution is true, therefore P. It's just fallacy. All the evotards use it with everything they say, and I tell you what, I must have busted them literally thousands of times and just laughed at them. Here's another one in our branch of the genre. If the spherical Earth with a radius of la 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 is true, P, we will observe differing elevation angles. How that put this in there many years ago. How you like that? Of the stars, la 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 Q. We observe differing elevation angles of the star Q. Therefore, the spherical Earth is true. Therefore, P. So based on its form, it's a logical fallacy. The logical fallacy is that P doesn't necessarily follow from Q. For example, if I had just eaten a whole pizza, I would feel very full. Q. I feel very full. Q. Therefore, I've just eaten a whole pizza. Therefore, P. Well, couldn't I have eaten a 20-ounce ribeye with fries with old 96er? Or the old 96er, right? Yeah, I could have, or any number, hundreds of other combinations, probably thousands. So in this case, prove the spherical Earth first, Graham Munchers. Oh, now to denying the antecedent, Nathan's favorite. He's got a thing for this one. Denying the antecedent. So this is a modus tollens corruption. Formal logical fallacy. If P, then Q, not P, therefore not Q. If they are buried together, P, then they both existed together, Q. They're not buried together, not P, therefore they didn't exist together, therefore not Q. You see it? This one's hard to catch. You have to know these, you have to know your P's and Q's, and you have to have them in the correct order to catch it. Here's another classic. If you give a man a gun, P, he could kill someone, Q. He has no gun, not P, therefore he can't kill anyone, therefore not Q. That should jump off the page at you. Comments and questions on this one? I know there will be.
There just isn't any denying the antecedents that come up in the flat Earth argument for some reason. I always like it and admire it, and I hear it argued by, you call them evo-tards. It just doesn't come up very often in the flat Earth, and I'm waiting for it. It's one of those things that you're just sitting on going, somebody is eventually going to deny the antecedent. But you've never given any examples of them in the flat Earth discussion, and you've always said, oh, well, there just isn't really that many examples of how you can deny the antecedent when it comes to the globe Earth, presumably because there's no physical if-P bit that you can provide in the first place to work as a logical or not work as a logical fallacy, as the case may be.
Yeah.
Whereas when it comes to, well, these two things have been buried together, and obviously, therefore, they existed together. And look, we never find these two things together, so obviously they never existed together. Well, that, I would say, would slip most people by, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Like you say, when you do it with the gun, it's much, much better because the if-P statement, if a man's got a gun, then he can kill this other guy. He hasn't got a gun, therefore he hasn't killed this other guy. What? You immediately hear it. It's a much better example of getting the if P, then Q, not P, therefore not Q, to resonate with the audience. So I like that. Is that the first time you've used that?
I don't think so. I think that's been in here for a while, but I think you brought that up on one of the previous presentations, and I said, well, let me put another example, because this example, let me put it on screen, because this, like you said, this example, it's hard to catch it, right? But when you put it in this sense, right, it's easy to catch. And it's really hard on the go. That means when you're in a discussion with someone, and if you're not like very familiar, even above very familiar, you'd have to be anticipating this, right? Your P's and Q's have to be together. It's hard to catch. That's why, but I did put that in there for that reason.
I kind of want to be caught out by it. That's why I kind of want somebody to use it in the discussion of flat Earth or globe Earth versus flat Earth, whatever you want to call it, and catch me out. I'm kind of hoping someone will, because, like you say, I'm expecting to hear it in the EvoTard discussion because I've heard it formulated so many times. So it's like you've been trained to expect it. So you're waiting for them to line up those P's and Q's, as you put it. You've got to know your P's and your Q's and hear the affirmation statement first and go, right, there's their P statement. Right, okay, that follow-on statement doesn't necessarily follow, and then comes the denying the antecedent bit. How unfamiliar I am with it. After the fact, they've got to actually put that into form, which I do quite like about it, because most of the time with affirming the consequent, they don't actually have to state the last bit of the form.
Right, it's implicit in the argument.
Exactly. Because with denying the antecedent, it isn't. That the payoff comes with the not P, therefore not Q bit.
Yeah.
not buried together, therefore never existed together, is going to be the point that they're making. So
Yep.
normally you get the full form, which I like. I want to hear it. And I also want to hear it in Flat Earth and get caught out by it. Do you know what I mean? For my own amusement.
Yes. You did, yeah. You like this, so this has been your favorite ever since it popped up. Who's that numpty? I did a show on it, remember? Because he did the same. He did the same exact thing. What was his name? I don't see him around too much anymore. He had that fucking numpty lion as an avatar. What the heck was his name?
Oh, yeah, I know who you mean.
Yeah, him and Rumpus used to be buddies. I hammered them both, but this guy, he came up with the this similar argument right here with fossils. Toady.
Toady, that's it. Toady. Yes, he used it.
Yeah. Go ahead, Adam.
It's just this PQ relationship is. See, I'm not very good. Like you two are experts at naming them and defining them. I'm not very good. What I'm good at is sniffing the illogic.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to define the two together, but it's the P's and the Q's, and it's that application of logic between the two that's always the weakness or the strength. In the Black Swan, you know, the strength isn't because the Earth is a ball of this. It's the fact that the P's and the Q's match up and they can't be broken within the logic. That's the bonus. There was just, you know, these things bug me, and it's a little miscellany, but I wonder why we say P and Q. And at first I thought, oh, it has no link, but it does if you think to the logic. So let me read it. What do P and Q stand for? The bartenders would keep a watch on the alcohol consumption of the patrons, keeping an eye on the pints and the quarts that were consumed. As a reminder to the patrons, the bartender would remind them that mind your P's and your Q's. And there's the logic, and I'm wondering what's the link to that? And as I was saying, between the two have to have a logic. So within the Black Swan, they both define each other. So you can't mug somebody off and say, I've had 4 pints and that's 23 quarts, because there's a relationship between the two, a logical relationship between the two. So somebody can't root you off and say you owe me for 4 quarts, even though I've had X amount of pints, if the two don't logically match. And I think that's where the two come from, as in all good things, making sure you're not ripped off at the pub.
Love it.
I do too.
Latest.
I do too. That was the best part right there, Adam. I was unaware of that. I thought it did go back. I wasn't for sure whether it was pints and quarts. I was thinking about something else, but that's very interesting.
We normally save that for a Tuesday night, don't we, Kiwi?
Yeah. Yeah.
What
like,
Adam's trying to
go ahead.
Is that
Go ahead.
in a relationship where you've got a direct link in a quantity to two things, they're intrinsically linked and can't be separated. So therefore, if you can show a break in where they are distinctly not separated, that's how this logic stacks up, or in the case of logical fallacy, does not stack up. But you've got to pay attention to whether or not the things are actually related to one another or not. In the case of P's and Q's, in this setting in the bar, they're directly related. If you can keep your mindset on whether or not those two things are related and whether or not someone's bought in something that isn't, then you can recognize whether or not it's logically consistent or logically inconsistent.
Yes.
Thank you, Nathan. Yeah, brilliant.
Oh, it's me summarizing your excellent point. I mean, I announced you after you gave it, Adam. I'm impressed because I certainly didn't know that either. That was excellent.
On the fly research that was. I was just looking up because I was thinking, where does it come from? And there was a couple of links, so between the two, but that seems to be. But it links. I say the point is.
Hold on a second. Hold on. I'm reading a Quora article here. There is a common misconception that P's and Q's are linked to pints and quarts. It's wrong. I'm only joking.
Yeah, it's Quora. That would never undermine anyone. But But the point being, whether it's true or not, its derivation is, it's as you summarise, and that's what I said. That's the point I was trying to make. It's that there is a logical link between the two, and you can see if there's a perversion of that logic, whether that's the black swan, Frankton quartz. Yeah.
Well, thanks, Adam.
Sometimes you expect me to go on more, don't you?
I do, and I did. However, I did finish my banana already, so you're good to go.
It was one of the, I did mention it earlier when we were going through begging the question and Phil's comment. I know you don't want to focus too much on Phil, and I won't. But his implication was something else that came from Tim Osman. I said there was two things. I've just remembered what the other one was, which is to say that there is a fallacy that, again, at surface level, a bit like with appeal to authority, if you take it literally in terms of what the words say, the fallacy, at surface level, you might interpret that to mean that it's calling somebody out on using a fallacy. Therefore, that in itself is a fallacy because you're not presenting an argument. You're just calling them out on using a fallacy.
That's on our list.
Oh, really? Should I shut up at this point?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's down. I don't know how far it is down there. I don't even know if we'll get to it today, for goodness sakes. But that's fine. I mean, I like the discussion about these, but it's coming. All right, one of the last port in the storms, and people. I mean, it's self-evident what it is, but people don't know what it is. Surprisingly, cherry picking. That's one of the things that we get with everything else. Cherry picking. As soon as their back's up against the wall, that's what you're going to get, especially if you post any citations. See, they never do that. It is so rare. It's like an albino blue whale that you'll get a numpty dipshit BallTARD supporting what he says with citation or bibliography or something like that. He's not going to do it, right? They never do it. When they do, they usually get busted. In fact, one of the first times I seen them do it was Rumpus, and he used the citation, and he cherry-picked it. I mean, it wasn't, you can't get any better than that. But I digress. Let's figure out what this thing is. So cherry-picking, or suppressing evidence, or the fallacy of incomplete evidence, it's an informal fallacy, as opposed to a formal one up there with the P's and Q's. This one, you don't have to wear a tie. It's an informal fallacy where selected evidence is presented that supports the position of a single argument, while contrary evidence is withheld or omitted. Pretty self-explanatory. The crayon-munching clowns take a practice employed by the media, politicians, business and advertising, and pseudoscience, then, out of context, oh, the irony, feebly and clumsily superimpose it on actual scientific discourse. This has no place in actual scientific discourse. If they knew what science was, then they'd understand this, but they can't get it. Then when the Crayola munchers get backed into a corner, like I said before, which happens at light speed while being bludgeoned to death with the business end of a baseball bat, they last port into storm gas, cherry picking. Every single one of them do it. You've heard them. If you haven't heard them, you haven't been out here. You see, in actuality, it's absolutely impossible to cherry pick from actual scientific literature because it's empirically proven phenomena. The only way that you can possibly cherry pick within a document or reference is if there is more than one conclusion within the exact same topic. If this is the case, then the document itself is contradictory, not empirical, not scientifically valid to begin with. Boneheads. Another subcategory, quote mining fallacy, quoting out of context, is a type of cherry picking. What does it mean to quote someone out of context? After all, every quotation necessarily includes large sections of the original material and thus an out-of-context quotation. What makes this a fallacy See? What makes this a fallacy, it's not a fallacy yet, is to take a selected quotation or a selective quotation which distorts, alters, or even reverses the originally intended meaning. This can be done accidentally or deliberately. So posting a citation with appropriate reference isn't quote mining or cherry picking, for goodness sakes. Have you people even attended high school? Ever done a research paper, possibly? Because if you say that, you just compromise yourself as not attending high school. If this was the case above, every frigging research paper with a bibliography or works cited page would be rendered void and the authors charged with academic fraud. You idiots. Following the logic from Retardia, these citations below, we'll get to them, are cherry-picked, and the paper should be dismissed, and the authors charged or indicted with academic fraud. Obviously, we have delayed choice, quantum eraser, physical review letters. There's 10 violations. We're not going to get into that. We'll go with the bigger one. So, Zhao Song Ma, quantum eraser with a causally disconnected choice. Let's check this out. Let's pull this up. So, there's 52, according to them, according to their concept of what quote mining is, there is 52 violations of quote mining here. So we'll go down to the end, to the works cited page, or the references, same thing, or bibliography, right? See where, here they are. So as in references, on who they cited in their paper, there are, count them, 52 of them. So if the BallTARD idiots were right, these are 52 violations, right? This paper should be shit-canned. Why isn't it? Well, because the numpty dipshits don't know what quote mining is. That's why. Simple. It also indicts every single encyclopedia and dictionary ever written. This is how stupid this is. Also justifies my wife rejecting the chicken marsala recipe I gave her because in the very same recipe book, directly beneath it, it has chicken pot pie, which I hate. The only way, oh, by the way, the only way to quote someone is if a third party is quoted in a document. The citation will then read as quoted in. Duh. To cite the appropriate reference isn't a quote, it's a citation. Duh. Number 3, when pretended clown fairy tales implode, they immediately appeal, again, like cherry picking, like Pavlov's dog, to quote mining. How many times have you heard that? All right. Get ready to reap the whirlwind, crayon munchers, because you're going to get this right slapped in your face. And I stop every time somebody does it. I stop them. And then I say, and? Did you think you were done? You now have to support your charge, i.e. show where and how each were taken out of context, right? You got to support your claim. I get metric tons of people that haven't even read the friggin' document in question. How in the world can you charge me with quote mining, taking something out of context, when you haven't read the friggin' context yet? This friggin' numpty dipshit, it just rings in my mind because it was so hilarious. It was, what the heck, Georgie, Porgy, Pumpkin Pie. Back in the day, the day that he called out, you know, George, not going to work here anymore, Hanachuk, right? The day that he called out Brian Mullen on YouTube, right? I immediately went to his video. I started talking to him and then started tearing apart his friggin' feebly contrived arguments, and I put a couple citations in there, right? And right away, quote mining. But in his discussion, when he charged me with quote mining, he goes, I have never read this document. However, you're quote mining. He just contradicted himself. How could he charge me with quote mining, but have never read the document before, when quote mining is taking something out of context? It's like shoveling horse shit, then setting your shovel on fire and then bashing yourself in the face with it. That's how stupid this is. That's exactly what he did. Say again?
Oh, sorry. I thought you...
let's have that analogy again, because that went over my head a bit. It's like
Let me attempt with QE's permission. I don't know if he's done though.
I'm not
Opening
done.
it up for us to chat.
I'm not done particularly with this. I got another rant to go.
I just want the analogy again so I can enjoy it.
What the
Because I've been
analogy?
fully
You start
grasped it.
shoveling.
Yes, please.
Yes, you start shoveling horse shit, right? And then you fucking light it on fire, the end of the shovel, and then you bash yourself in the face with it.
I sense your rant that follows this will be with examples, so I'm hoping to just contextualize it again for the audience with your permission, but I'll happily shut up if you want to get through this, and then we'll do it after.
No, we could stop right there. Go ahead. If you got something, it's no big deal.
I need Adam to play along, though. Are you willing, Adam?
Patsy at the ready.
Okay, perfect. So in the example earlier, right, Adam talked about pints and quarts with citation, but let's just pretend for a moment that I'm going to be backing up Adam's argument. So this example, we're going to pretend that the Quora joke I made is actually true. So I've got a citation that says, it is commonly known that P's and Q's are in reference to pints and quarts and used in logical descriptions, and descriptions are logical fallacy. But this is false because it was made up on the spot by a gentleman named Adam Meakin on a show called BALLBUSTERS in 2022. And then it gives a link to the show where it is first referenced for the first time ever. So we're assuming that that's the case, right? I'm not saying Adam has made this up. It's just part of the example, right? So my citation actually is describing how it's wrong. What I do is I just put quotes around the bit that says, it is commonly known that P's and Q's are referring to pints and quarts in logic. End quote. I leave out the bit that says, this is wrong because ... That is cherry picking. I've taken a section of the text that backs my argument that this is true, and the section of text is specifically quoting it as a understood fact that is in fact wrong. But I only take the bit that describes it as an understood fact to make my point. That's cherry picking.
Yeah.
Just to add this out a little bit more, where the nuance comes in the misunderstanding. QE's example was, I like this recipe, and because later in the book there's a different recipe I don't like, it invalidates the first recipe that I do like. No, it doesn't. And by the same token, if in that same Quora citation, exact same text, the guy takes apart how pints and quarts were just made up on the spot as being to do with logic by a man called Adam Meakin, but later in the text, literally uses pints and quarts in an example. Right? Now, the person goes to this citation, unlike George Netanyahu, who hasn't even bloody read the thing, get the context, reads the context and sees that contextually it's taking apart the argument, but also sees that underneath he uses pints and quarts. So accuses the person of quote mining or cherry picking. Because check it out, later in the reference, the guy's actually using that as an example. So how can that be right, you cherry picker? Yeah, so that isn't cherry picking.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, you done? Exactly, you got it. Yeah, so it's pretty funny. This is really funny when like I said, just to dote on it for a couple seconds. He actually said, "What in the world is this document? I've never seen this quote mining." I couldn't. I was absolutely shocked because he's a self-purported educated man. I mean, that's preposterous. I was actually shocked and then started belly laughing, then pissed myself. I tried to explain this to him, but of course he diverted that. You know, in text, you can just keep going with your bullshit. He's lucky we weren't, having a conversation. But it's pretty funny. Just be careful of this. Oh, and that's tantamount to running up to a police officer and charging me with robbing a bank, quote mining. And then when the police officer challenges you with who, what, when, where, why, and how, you just stare at him. You got nothing. That's even better than what he did. That, like I said, this shows beyond a shadow of doubt you haven't first fucking clue what quote mining is. Moreover, personally, I use, in this particular genre, a variation of parenthetical citation. Heard of it? Obviously rhetorical. It's practiced every day from 5th grade to the Supreme Court and used extensively in scientific literature in support of claims. I just showed you one from the causally disconnected choice, right? Irrespective that this format isn't conducive to posting works cited pages. Duh. I don't want to have my post or presentations longer than War and Peace, so I just post the citations with appropriate reference in the actual body, minus a works cited page, right? We'd be there all day if I did that. By the mere fact that they brought this up is alone a screaming testimony that they've never reviewed scientific literature. Ever. That's what you're admitting to this, implicitly. You wouldn't know what actual science was if it landed on your face, spun around, started whistling Dixie, climbed up your ass, started kicking footballs wrapped in concertina wire. Essentially. Do you need any more gasoline with your matches? In that same vein, charge, and we went over this last week, but in the very same reference QE you used, it says that astronomy is science. Another fallacy. And like I said, we went over it last week. We won't do it again. I'll just describe it. This is an all or nothing fallacy. When it is suggested or implied that one must believe all or nothing of a particular set of beliefs. I'm going to give you an example here in a second. Another example. So did I cite it? If not, then I'm not responsible for it. If I post a citation discussing the crucial importance of the bond force constants in the water diameter, however, within the very same reference, it goes on about how the bond force constants in water diameters are created by invisible three-toed gnomes behind the Crab Nebula throwing pixie dust in a black hole, and how they are the cause for invisible three-toed gnome calcium oxalate stones. That fact, number one, doesn't refute, render null, or impugn my citation or have any impact on it whatsoever. Number two, doesn't denote that I believe that invisible three-toed gnomes exist or have kidney stones. Number three, doesn't obligate me to explain or justify in any way, shape, or form invisible three-toed gnomes, crab nebulas, black holes, or calcium oxalate stones. And number four, shows unequivocally that your clumsily awkward appeal is an incoherent, belly-laughing, red herring fallacy from the Black Lagoon. It's absolutely non sequitur, too. In other words, Mr. Magoo, I am only responsible for the citation. Within those citation marks at the beginning and at the end, that's it. That's what I'm responsible for. If I post it in a works cited page or in one of my presentations, either that person I'm citing has to demonstrate it or I do in his stead if I'm using it. Welcome to 5th grade. Again, by the mere fact that I had to explain this to you numpty dipshit, not the legitimate guys, demonstrably reveals not only that you've never reviewed scientific literature, like I said above, ever, but brings in the serious question if and how you ever passed high school. In other words, you're a demonstrated no-depth wiki discover channel parroting, pretend to clown numpty muppet dipshit that just pagaks to try to save your dumbasses. It's not going to work. And I just exposed millions of people. Maybe not millions. That might be an exaggeration. Question, comment?
Could I say something quick? Because I'm just popping in for a moment.
Weren't you in here before?
I was, but I had to go out again. And
Did you leave?
Yeah, I'd have to go off again. Just because cherry picking is used so much, and a lot of people do not understand it. You have a brilliant recording of it somewhere on your numpty clips for the audience to go and find. It's from Jose's, where I can't remember what bowler it was. One of the bowlers was about, I think, water vapor not being a gas. Water. Yeah.
Professor Phil Balland.
Dave Arkia had read this. I don't know if it was. I think it was the water vapor point. I think Dave Arkia had read the same thing that this bowler read out, but your man left out the very end part.
Oh, yes.
Yes. That. I can't remember the full details. Maybe you can remember it.
It's been a while, man, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, because your man, I can't remember which border, he read out 3/4 of the page and left out the important part at the end, which stated very clearly that water vapor is a gas. He left out that part at the end.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. And David corrected him and read the whole thing out and then read the end part. So that's classic cherry picking.
Yes, you're correct, Brian. He did. And he caught him. Right. Yeah.
This is where you need Riley. For two reasons. First, like from my professional training point of view, that kind of quote one is basically called lying, deceit, and dishonest, and it's of no use in my field. In Riley's field, it's the fundamentals of law, as far as I can see, quote mining. The second point you need Riley for is back in the day, Nathan. Do you remember Riley catching these guys out on quote mining live on air? And then,
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think what it was, where they read half the sentence.
Well, I can give you the setup for it.
You got it.
Anthony's basically reading along the citation, but unbeknownst to the guy, I mean, it was probably at that point that I realised we had to insist on them giving us the citation if they were going to be reading it out. But Anthony, by coincidence, it wasn't like he planned it, had the exact citation up on screen for himself while the guy was reading it. And the exact same thing happened. Just didn't read the end bit. Or, from memory, he added his own interpretation on.
He added. I remember that. He added it. Yeah, that was hilarious.
There's actually the best example of this, Brian, is always going to be the one that QE laid out earlier. I don't know if you've got this trimmed out, QE, but it was from, I think it was on 24/7 Discord. And Rumpus is there with a whole bunch of fairly, what I would call competent flat earthers. He's presented his citation, but as you say, never happened before or since. He's got it up on screen, but it's only one or two sentences. And the contradiction is literally in the second sentence. Part of the thing he's put on screen, and nobody calls him on it. So he's got this citation that he's clearly cherry-picked that's got a contradictory statement immediately afterwards. He's presented it on screen, but nobody's read it. He's only read the first half, and nobody's realised.
Yeah, I lost my mind. Yeah, that was in fact, that was when Rumpus was on Ranty Show.
Nobody caught it.
Yeah, I caught it immediately because I seen what he was doing, and I went off on him. I couldn't.
After you got up off the floor because he'd put a citation up.
Yep. I don't think I cut that out. Maybe I did a show. I can't remember. It was
the
so
ballers
long.
Are very good at taking something, and then when it comes to the part they don't like, either not reading them out or making up their own version of what's written.
You want me to go snatch it up? You want?
Sorry?
Do you? I was talking to Nathan. Sorry to interrupt. Do you want me to go snatch it up? I know what citation that is.
Yeah, if you can go and get it, that'd be great.
Yeah, give me a second.
While you're doing that, just leading on from what Brian was saying, so I can buy you some time.
Okay.
So the example that I will always use in that reference, Brian, is going to be Jose J.G. Gonzalez taking somebody's citation and then telling them that the page 47 says that they think the Earth's a ball, and you've got to hold that reference close to your heart.
Now, how can I go look for that when you bring that up?
I'm not going to get that, but I'm just saying that's the misconception of this particular fallacy, which is cherry picking, which is when we cite it, we can give an exact example of where they've taken something that's very specifically recontextualized by the next sentence and show how they've cherry picked it. But they'll bark at us all day and then misunderstand the difference between a reference and a citation. And they'll take your citation and then say, this man who has described the crime in only a way that the person who committed it could have described it also says further on in their 5-page confession that they definitely didn't commit the crime, therefore cherry picking. You're just like, what are you having me on? You don't understand this fallacy, do you? Or worse still, which is the George Netting example. Well,
Yeah.
I've never read this document. I don't know how this is contextualized. Clearly, you've cherry picked it. It's obviously out of context without me knowing the context.
You can expect me to find this. I can't find the damn thing. Where did I put it? Oh,
Well,
keep
just try you
going.
a few more seconds. Still trying. I
Yeah.
think George and others like him are training others around him. It's not that he's not educated. It's not that he doesn't know what an application of logical fallacy is. I give them more credit than that based on my interactions with them. I feel that they're training the people around them who are actually numpty dipshits, as you're inferring George is, to do this.
Yeah, I like them when they Jedi mind trick, when they actually believe the stuff that comes out of the pretender clown's mouth. You know, the knuckle draggers, they just walk around lapping up the surface puke behind them. I love it when they just parrot it.
Got that at the moment with the elevation angle argument. So they go, hey, what are you going to do about McToon's Polaris challenge? 10 grand up for grabs. And you're like, dealt with this every day for the last month. My God, try to keep up to date with the flat earth debate. He required a flat earth angle to make the argument. You're really literally licking up the surface level puke that's left out on the anti-flat earth channels. My God, it's pathetic.
Yeah. I'm still searching for it, man. Come on, drag it out just a little bit more. I'm almost there. I got it.
Oh, hey. Timing.
Yeah, here it comes. 1 second. Let me put it over there. Leave it there for a couple seconds. So, on Numpty Ranty Show, there's a big argument going on about gravity. And while the Rumpy, the Numpty, spent like, I don't know, 15 or 20 minutes constantly, there was so many equivocation fallacies because he was jumping back and forth between Newtonian mechanics and Einstein's general theory of relativity. I mean, I was pissing myself. No one was calling him on it. Of course, Ranty was there, obviously. He doesn't know his ass from a pipe wrench. He kept doing it, right? And then finally, at the end, because the argument, I think Anthony was in the chat or something, or maybe he was even on the show and he was trying to provoke Rumpus with this force nonsense. You know what he usually does. And so what Rumpy did was post this from Joylan Bloomfield, right? He had the whole citation up, the whole thing. There was nothing hidden. And then he started reading. He goes, okay, from Joylan Bloomfield. So to summarize, general relativity says that matter bends space-time, and the effect of that bending of space-time is to create a generalized kind of force that acts on objects. Rumpus stops dead right there. Doesn't say a single word. With the whole thing on, it's on screen. The next sentence, it's not, pronounced like it is right here, but it's on screen, and he never gets back to it. And I'm saying, I was losing my damn mind. Right?
Okay, stop.
Go ahead.
Stop. Now read the full contextualized citation as how you would present it.
Yes. So to summarize, general relativity says that matter bends space-time, and the effect of that bending of space-time is to create a generalized kind of force that acts on objects. However, it isn't a force as such that acts on the object, but rather just the object following its geodesic path through space-time.
That is the perfect quintessential example of cherry picking.
Yep.
The fallacy of taking a portion of text and recontextualize it by moving the quotes prior to the bit that completely disagrees with the bit you're using it to make your point with. In this case, gravity is a force, in spite of the contextualized cherry-picked citation expanding on what is described as a force as not being a force.
It was perfect, man. I don't know if I did a show. That was such a long time ago. It's probably still on Ram if he didn't delete his Numpty channel. It's still there somewhere.
I love these shows on fallacies. Basically, that's all we deal with.
Yeah.
That's the lion's share of flat Earth debate. Every one of the 1,600 shows has been ram-packed chock-a-block with the argument to a fallacy, the pulling apart of a fallacy, or a fallacy being presented by an anti-flat earther. That's all we do. I love these shows anyway. They're great.
Yeah, they are. I enjoy them too. And it's educational, right? If you're unfamiliar with these, just go through them. I'm giving you, listen, there's about, with informal fallacies, there's a ton of them. There's about 500 of them. You don't need to know every single one. You just need to be familiar with the ones that you're going to hear out here, and you've heard them before, right? You're going to hear them again. I guarantee it, because they don't care. Here's one, genetic fallacy. Genetic fallacy attempts to discredit or support a claim or an argument because of its origin or genesis, when such an appeal to its origins is irrelevant. Now, this is what I've been told, because I don't listen to Shamalam again, Panda Ding Dong, but everyone says that this is what he does. This is the example. Somebody makes a claim, and their immediate response, you got that argument from Nathan Oakley and QE. It's their only response, or they lead out with it. Well, that's a fallacy, folks. Logical fallacy, genetic fallacy. This one's pretty cut and dry. Any comments or questions on this one?
What do you mean? You
I
didn't
want to expand on it a lot, but I will afterwards. Go ahead, Neil. Sorry, Neil. Go ahead.
I just said, what do you mean? You didn't come up with the scientific method, QE?
No, that's mine.
I do want to expand on this, but I want you to get to the end of the bit before we do.
Expand. You want to expand on genetic fallacy? This is all I got with it.
Well, it comes to ownership of arguments more than anything else, and that is a confidence issue in terms of the person putting forward the argument when you come to this particular fallacy. Because if it's presented to you, there is that element of understanding that if you're putting forward something, it becomes yours. So there's also, I don't know if this is attached to the same fallacy, but you get defeated in the argument, but the argument does actually take place. And then you blame the person that you've got the argument from. For example, if you try and explain that you can't have gas pressure without a container, and the person that you're arguing with says, well, you can have a gas pressure gradient, so therefore your argument's void, and you don't know where to go, you go, well, this is actually just a Nathan Oakley argument. It's a similar, is it along the same lines of the same fallacy when you appeal to the person you've got the information from rather than the opponent who appeals to your origin of your argument? Is it the same?
They're closely related. Right.
But the reason I bring it up is because regardless of the fallacy being committed, obviously the point of us discussing this, it is about you having the confidence to say, I'm putting this argument forward. So I would necessarily suggest that you don't address the fallacy. You can get tied up in it, and often these fallacies are put out there as red herrings, as complicated as this may now get. In other words, you can get tied up in pointing out that, no, just because I've got this argument from a particular individual doesn't make the argument invalid, and then point out how that's a fallacy, rather than taking ownership of the argument in the first instance and just restating it for the sake of argument. In other words, completely hand-waving their fallacy in that regard, not even addressing it. Because you've got, at that point, my assumption, and the reason I'm stressing this, that gets employed when you've got a winning argument. And the temptation is to focus on that, the address, the fallacy in the address.
Right.
Rather than the fact you've got the winning argument.
Right.
That's why they're having to do it.
Yeah, you got it.
That's why I bring it up.
Yeah, it's important. Yeah. That has a little shading to it. Correct. And you brought that up. Yes. It's another shade of the genetic fallacy. All right. False dichotomy, also known as a false dilemma, black or white fallacy. The all or nothing fallacy also fits under false dichotomies. It is the argument tries to force a conclusion by offering or implying an incomplete list of alternatives. Typically, only 2 options are considered, while in fact a number of additional options are available. The flagship example here in our genre, there are only 2 choices, QE, natural and supernatural, right? All of them do that because they're numpty dipshits. This is a textbook false dichotomy fallacy because they forgot the third one. Synthetic. This is pretty much cut and dry and easy to recognize. Any comments on this one?
Absolutely. Your presentation needs updating. Hands up. I won't do a straw poll. Very rarely do we have natural versus supernatural in flat Earth debate. You may come across it with evotards.
No, I come across it with BallTARDs. In fact, last week, there was a big hoot nanny in chat while you were going over the Sexton argument. There's a big hoot nanny because this gets down to scientific hypotheses and what can be the dependent variable. So this went on for hours in chat. I'm dealing with this all the time.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were going to ask me, that aside, and I don't mean to diminish that in any way, other than I'm going to completely diminish it by making my example seem much more important. The false dichotomy I would stick up as the poster child would be globe Earth versus flat Earth.
Yes, yes. You could do it. That could be a false dichotomy if you could show it.
It's a false dichotomy, by the way.
I know it is.
So it's just for the audience, because you might think, well, that's obvious, isn't it? No, it's not that obvious, because the way it's a false dichotomy is because when I say flat Earth, I've got on camera, but I put air quotes around it and say flat Earth contextualized as a model handed down to you when you first arrived in this subject, as opposed to an aspect of the ground that you are standing on, that being that we stand upon a flat plane. It's measurably, let's not rattle off the list. We're on a flat plane. That isn't flat Earth. Flat Earth, when phrased by your opponent in a false dichotomy fallacy, will be the notions adhered to on a pizza pie model with a sun and moon revolving around it at a certain distance. And it's that model called flat Earth versus their model called globe Earth.
Keep going. I got another logical fallacy I'm tracking down. I didn't add to the presentation.
No worries. Well, I mean, you understand that false dichotomy isn't something that you have the burden of.
Yes.
And you can very quickly pull apart any attacks that you might suffer. So a couple of days ago, we had a couple of newbies that came on the flat Earth debate. And obviously, I don't want to blow my own trumpet, but I'm just listening out for certain cues to reposition what they're asking me in terms of how it's a fallacy, because it always is. And in this case, the first attempt is going to be with a false dichotomy. How do you explain how this works on a flat Earth? Now, that will resonate with a lot of the audience, because you'll hear it all day long if you're claiming to be a flat earther. Well, how does this work on a flat Earth? That's a false dichotomy fallacy, because the person in their mind needs pointing out that what they think flat Earth is actually their notions of what we as flat earthers will have been handed out, as will everybody else in the general populace, as the notion of flat Earth and its model implications. Now, does that model explain this phenomena that I'm going to juxtapose with my model that I know it can be explained with thusly, therefore winning, proving we're on a sphere? Well, if you understand that you don't necessarily have to defend any modeling of anything ever when you say you're a flat earther, you appreciate an aspect of the nature of the ground that you're standing on and a lie that has been perpetrated that you can disprove in terms of sphericity to the ground that you're standing upon. Now, those two things don't imply models, and you don't have to justify anything about a model when someone challenges you to do so because they've got a model and they want to introduce that model, and it's easiest to introduce it if it's your model, flat Earth, versus my model, globe Earth. Recognizing that models, we'll get to this later, have only mentioned it towards the end of my ramble by QE time, is a reification fallacy, false dichotomy. Which version of the world we're not actually standing on, i.e. the model, is going to win? Well, neither. They're both false. They're both positioned in a false dichotomy and actually both reification fallacies. You're forcing me to reify a model that I haven't claimed called flat Earth. What the hell is this model that I don't think we're standing on because I understand what reification is? But reification is probably something we'll get to later on the list. Hopefully I've bought Kiwi enough time. We'll see. Otherwise I'll keep rambling.
No, you're good. We already did reification fallacy before. But I want to shout out a super chat. It's Kiefer Green. Flat Earth math used a genetic fallacy on me. I didn't know what it was, so I just said, of course I'm using FED and QE's arguments. They're winning arguments. Then he said, right? Too funny.
That's actually the perfect response. Don't address the fact that that's absolutely perfect. Thank you so much for that super chat. That's ideal. If anything, that's better than what I said. Go along with the fallacy. Why not? You want that fallacy? Well, yeah, of course I'm using their arguments. They're wonderful because they win.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Keeper Green. Appreciate it, man. Yep, I got it. I didn't post it yet. The reason why I said it, because I went down to the next fallacy and it just hit me because I remembered it. So we'll deal with it immediately right after this one. They're connected. You'll see what I mean here in a second. So shifting the burden of proof. This is pretty self-evident when people do this. Sometimes it'll catch you off guard. That's why we're going over it. So just make sure you got all your P's and Q's together, even though it doesn't have anything to do with P's and Q's. So, shifting the burden of proof. Description: making a claim that needs justification, then demanding that the opponent justifies the opposite of the claim. It's a train wreck. And here's one from Craig Fight the Tight Shirt. Again, Fat the Fat Girth, whatever you align with. Scientific evidence of gravity is quite easily, it's called, that's all jacked up. Scientific evidence of gravity is quite easily, it's called gravitational redshifted. That's what he exactly said. Photons leaving the surface of the Earth. Response, as exampled by? Craig, exampled by the photons are redshifted as they leave the surface of the Earth. Response, and? Well, why would that happen if gravity wasn't the cause? So there's a couple fallacies here, right? The one that we just went over besides this one, right? This is an argument from ignorance fallacy. However, it is shifting the burden of proof. Yep. So here's another little twisted sister before we get to the fallacy, which everyone's looking for. I went and chased this down because I've been hearing this. It's a recent occurrence, like over the past year, of numpty dipshits attempting to prove or challenge other people to prove non-existence. Gem Panda is the leader of this fallacy. The description here is demanding that one proves the non-existence of something in place of providing adequate evidence for the existence of that something. And they think that a non-existence claim is a positive claim of non-existence. That's a train wreck, people. A negative claim is a colloquialism for an affirmative claim that asserts that non-existence or exclusion of something. So the burden of proof, which we were just talking about, that's what led me to this, rests with the person making the claim and a positive claim. It is shifting the burden of proof for the person making the positive claim to insist that those who deny the positive claim have the burden to prove that the positive claim is false or non-existent. This is another fallacy right down there at the bottom. It's the logical fallacy of proving non-existence. Did everyone get that?
Yeah. So if I was to have the positive claim that unicorns are real, I challenge you show how there being no evidence of them proves that they don't exist.
Yeah,
that would be this fallacy.
Yes, exactly. It's a real train wreck, guys. Like I said, they think because you're making a claim, like it's a positive expression of air coming out of your lungs, that it's altogether everything is a positive claim, even negative claims. It's a train wreck. Abject train wreck. Now, trying to explain it to them is even funnier because they'll deny it till the cows come home. But I wanted to bring this up because it's pretty funny. You'll run across this. Hopefully, somebody do it in the next couple days on Nathan's show, and we'll pull it out. All right. The fallacy. I haven't heard this too many times in the recent past. It was big a couple years ago where people would claim, fallacy. You don't hear it all that often anymore, but just in case you do. Well, what the heck is it? It's concluding that the truth value of an argument is false based on the fact the argument contains a fallacy, right? We don't do that. And this is another last port in the storm of logical fallacy addicts. This is what they do. This seems to be the mental midgets get out of incoherent jail free card. Here's the steps. Number 1, carpet bomb a barrage of logical fallacies. Number 2, get embarrassed. And when getting embarrassed, when your back's against the wall. Number 3, bagok, fallacy. Like that, like there's any veracity to this, right? Listen up, tards. If you use fallacious reasoning to support your claim, then your entire argument, including your conclusion that you're providing support, is rendered void. Void. Do you get it? I know you don't, because I've had a couple people, mainly Timmy Clown. He was the one that really started with this fallacy nonsense. He didn't understand that. It just renders the whole argument void. No matter what your conclusion is, the whole thing gets thrown out. Any comments on this one?
Yes, so that's a misapplication of the fallacy to call fallacy when somebody is using lots of fallacies and their opponent points out how their reasoning isn't sound, i.e. not logic, but logical fallacy. And then you point out the form of their fallacy, how it's been constructed as a fallacy, how it's therefore void as an argument, and they cry fallacy. No, the fallacy is actually a fallacy. That is to say that if I construct an argument that is fallacious, that would be the form of my argument doesn't make sense, it doesn't prove my point. Yeah? And my point is inherently true. That would require, first and foremost, that I can easily demonstrate the point being true beyond the fallacy employed. That is to say, if I use an affirming the consequent formal logical fallacy to prove that my car is silver, and you point out that it's an affirming the consequent formal logical fallacy, however, it's easily demonstrable that the car is in fact silver, then deeming the argument void because simply the argument's used a fallacy is the fallacy. Because the argument, this is the most important detail, can still be demonstrated as true beyond the fallacy employed. Ergo, fallacy. It's not just false because there's been a fallacy employed. However, that requires that it can be shown to be true. Now, if you use a fallacy and you haven't got anything else other than your argument to back what you're claiming, then your entire argument becomes void, as just stated by Quantum Eraser. Now, if you haven't got anything further to that, obviously, if it's an argument on my show, have you got anything else is usually the next question, because if you can further to your fallacious reasoning show your point to be true by another means, then fair enough. You could, if I, at that stage, deem the argument to be void simply because it was first postulated with a fallacy, in spite of it being demonstrated true by another means, I would be guilty of the fallacy. Not distrue just because of the fallacy when it's been shown to be correct. Anyway, I just wanted to put that into context because it is still a fallacy. People may look it up, not read it, and just go, oh, look, it is still a fallacy. They said it wasn't true. If you threw out fallacy and then somebody showed how it was a fallacy and then, somebody claimed fallacy, therefore surely just shouting out fallacy after a load of genuine fallacies have been detailed and proven to be fallacious, that means they're right? Because here it is as a fallacy. The fallacy. Well, no, it is actually a fallacy. The fallacy. Hopefully those pauses will make that clear. But yeah.
I call fallacy. If you just call fallacy and there's no such thing actually happening, then you should call fallacy.
It's a rare event that somebody will contextually call fallacy. It's not often.
Nope.
Because it means that you've made an argument with a fallacy that is inherently true. Someone shows that the argument is false by way of fallacy, and then the opponent who used the fallacy shows that they're still true by another means, and the opponent then goes on to say, no, it's still wrong because you used a fallacy. That is such a rare event.
Yes. All right.
But when it does happen, you should definitely call fallacy.
Fallacy. Yeah, thanks. That's pretty funny, Arwen. All right, we're coming to the end. Unless somebody has something else.
To call fallacy doesn't imply that you know that your opponent is correct in the sense. All you're doing is calling out that they're using incorrect logic to prove it.
Yes. Is that it?
Sometimes when you're profound.
I knew it. Yeah. It was a slight, right? Not intended, but boy, it came off as a slight. I was wondering if you're going to respond. I figured the heck with it. Might as well just own it. It came out of my mouth. The heck with it.
This is typical stuff, though, isn't it? I mean, as profound as Adam was, this is complicated. You know, to wrap your head. Again, we're going to reference Phil Bell in the audience. It's for some people it's really easy. Me, I've got a logical mind. I grew up with a dad who was a programmer, and I understand logic. Therefore, the next natural sort of curiosity is going to be misappropriation of logic, i.e. logical fallacy. That has always intrigued me. But like most people, or like Phil Bell in my example, you may not necessarily have come from a background that sort of geared you towards an understanding in logic. And that's really the foundation that you need to get a good grasp of logical fallacy. And if you haven't got it, this may seem complicated. And that's fine, because it's not an easy thing to disseminate logic in the first instance without example. So while we do offer logical consistency arguments and explain the form, it's not like we can just train the audience in logic. Next best thing, however, is to talk about logical fallacy, how they're employed. Problem then comes that our opponents will take this ammunition and stick it in the wrong gun, i.e. they take things like the fallacy and misappropriate them, or cherry picking. There is a fallacy called cherry picking, taking something out of context, but they'll fire it at you like they've got a good argument or a good address to your argument by calling a fallacy, in this case cherry picking, and they haven't. They don't understand what the fallacy is.
Yep.
And I think if nothing else, as an audience member, that is the main point. Even if you don't necessarily understand the form and function of all these fallacies and logical consistencies, understand the misappropriation of them. Understand that when someone calls cherry picking, maybe it might be a good idea to go and actually look at what cherry picking is, even if you don't know what to do in the circumstance. Familiarize yourself with whether or not what they've called you on is actually the fallacy they've said. Because 9 times out of 10, I almost assure you it probably isn't. And they say cherry picking, it probably isn't.
Right, they're just shooting up the cherry tree.
Yeah, it's bagak. Right? So what you do, another little trick is ask them to define that. And then show where you did it. That's an old trick in the book.
Yeah. That's hard. See, it's hard in debate. Again, I'm not trying to blow my own trumpet or anything. Most of this has come from QE in terms of how it forms into the arguments in flat Earth debate. So, you know, credit where credit's due. But understanding how something is formed into a fallacy by your opponent, picking it apart, explaining how it's a fallacy, and then formulating their words back into the fallacy they've used and explaining how it's a fallacy. That's not easy. and I personally am not expecting anybody who's watching the show to necessarily pick up all of this information, arm themselves with it, and go out and think, wow, I can certainly overcome all of these logical fallacies with this information. Like I say, the most important thing to take away from this, if not that logically inclined, Phil, I'm talking to you really, is realise where we're showing how the misappropriation of claimed to be fallacies is used by our opponents. That is useful to almost everybody. You don't necessarily have to, when QE says things like, you won't necessarily know the fallacy and form of it, the P's and the Q's of it, you'll know something's wrong. Yeah? Something doesn't quite stack up. That's what hopefully you'll take away from this.
Yes. I wanted to give you, we're coming down to the end of this. I know it's been long, but I just have so much fun with these. I wanted to give you something that this fallacy doesn't come up all that often. I just wanted to show it as the subtle numptiness. And if you're not careful, you'll fall into it, right? But this is really numpty. Pay close attention to this. Pay attention to detail stuff, man. Once you get it, you'll say, oh my God. So this is called the fallacy of irrelevant thesis. It's arguing a point that's irrelevant to the subject at hand. It's a type of red herring fallacy. See, you got these, you got the title fallacies, and then you got fallacies that fall underneath it. Ad hom fallacy. A lot of fallacies fall underneath that. I just want to let you know that these aren't just in a vacuum. They're subcategories, right? But this one is the fallacy of irrelevant thesis. So listen to this. So you're a reporter, and you ask a sole survivor of a plane crash, how or why is it that you were able to survive the crash? The survivor answers, because if I hadn't survived, you wouldn't have been able to ask me the question. Well, you should be stumped right there and say, what the hell just happened, right? See, that's it. Like I said, it's a type of red herring. What he said is actually true. However, he didn't answer the question. How or why was he able to survive? He answered how or why he was able to answer the question.
It's a Yoda fallacy.
I love this fallacy because it forces you to pay attention to detail, right? Hang on every word, right? Because you'll get fooled easily, even though, like Nathan said, right? You know that something's wrong. You just can't pinpoint it, right? And sometimes it's good to write stuff down. Like after you're in a discussion, go ahead and write it down, what had happened, and try to evaluate it. If you got time on your hands or your little OCD, go ahead and write that stuff down because you get better. It's going to happen to you again, is what I'm trying to say. So just be prepared for it next time. This one's pretty funny. I always enjoyed this one.
All right, I think Arwin uses this one. Just correct me if I'm wrong. In an argument, if we're discussing how R is implemented, and Arwin was to suggest that its mere existence, by the fact that we're talking about how it's used in mathematics, means it exists. Because we're talking about it, it's in existence in our discussion. Therefore, it exists in physical reality.
Well,
to perform it in the fallacy, how can we be discussing R if it didn't exist? When the question would be, where do you measure R?
I see where you're going. Yep.
If it didn't exist, we couldn't be discussing it.
Yeah, I got you. Yes.
That's to confuse the physical, metaphysical, or natural, supernatural, isn't it? And
Well,
the point of acceptance is you know that point makes sense, but because of a category error, you accept it and then allow you to move forwards incorrectly because you've been mugged off in the category error.
well, it's like saying if paradoxes are impossible, then how could we know they exist?
That's twisted, man.
Yeah, it is a category error, isn't it, Adam? Because it's existing in the abstract description, not in the physical. Therefore,
Right.
to say because it exists and we're describing it, it means it exists in the physical.
Right.
You don't the switch.
It's a reification fallacy too.
So that's the bait and switch in the argument where subconsciously you accept, because you accept that there is an inherent truth in it, that the person that's mugging you off has placed it into a, like I said, into a physical realm as opposed to a metaphysical realm. The person being, in this case, Alwyn, with his dirty, or I should probably say in this case, probably more Baldwin, because it is, like I say, it's a trick, category error trick.
Yeah. This little fallacy right here is found, it dovetails with the fine-tuning argument. So how or why is the universe fine-tuned? Not how or why you were able to observe that the universe is fine-tuned. It's a real subtle one. I'd have to admit, it's right up there as one of my favorites, even though it doesn't get used that much in this in the genre. I thought I'd bring it up, and I always bring it up during the presentation to show you the subtle, nonsensory bullshit if you're not careful. And some people do this, they don't do it purposely. I'm not trying to provide intent. Sometimes people are just conditioned with this type of reasoning and don't think through it. I'm just trying to let you know that it's beneficial to think through these things when you have the opportunity. All right, I'm going to finish it up with what Betty gave me. I was just tearing somebody to shreds many years ago on a forum, and she copied this and saved it in her files. And when I was making this presentation up a couple years ago, she brought this out, and it cracked me up. So after I tore this guy a new one, this was his response. The John fallacy. It goes something like this. Blah, 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 the scientific method, blah, 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 bold font, blah, 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 uppercase, bold font, blah, 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 hypothesis, blah, 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 Aunt Sally. Really, it's Aunt Jenny. He missed it. It was another thing with Sally. Yada, 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 whistle Dixie, wibble, 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 pretender clown shaking my head. I thought it was classic, right? I forgot all about it, but she had copied it, right, and saved it. So that's for you guys out there. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. It lasted a few more weeks than it probably should have, but, no blood, no foul. Any questions or comments?
People won't get the reference. That's the problem. For the audience's benefit, QE and his comments are heavily censored to the point where it's almost pointless in making comments these days because they won't show up. You won't see a QE comment anywhere. Yep. Even on his own bloody videos half the time. His comments don't show up. So people don't like QE's comments. Why? Well, because they take a certain form. A form of absolute blunt consistency with logical flaws in someone's argument based on their quotes with numpty dipshit following the description of them following their quote and the annihilation thereof. They normally take up 2 to 3 paragraphs, but are very concise. I'm saying that because they're at surface level lengthy to your average Joe. But they're not. They're incredibly concise and very, very, very demeaning if you're going to read one and they're against you. Well, I can't stand. They're just not allowed, are they? Your comments aren't allowed.
Nope. I can't post any more comment. Those days are over.
But back in the day, if you ever read a QE comment under a numpty dipshit video, you would laugh. Because every single part of their argument pulled apart in a reasonably concise comment that you could read quicker than their video took.
Maybe you should rename it the fallacy of misplaced consensus.
Maybe you should make a new channel called QE's Comments.
Oh, wow. Those would be in the thousands, man. Over the years, I kind of miss it. It sharpens your chops, right? When you write everything out. I told you guys before, for me personally, I like to write most things down, take a look at it, evaluate it, and try not to make the same mistake twice. But that's just me, man. I'm a little bit out there.
You were collating it all. So when you were making these comments in the most prevalent way, when it mattered, was prior to you making videos. And I remember spending a chunk of time trying to convince you to actually be a YouTuber.
Mm-hmm.
I was successful in the end, which is great. But ultimately speaking, that was before you were doing something that you're you're going to be more widely received in the method that you're using now doing this than you are in comments.
Right.
As much as I like looking back on the days, and don't get me wrong, obviously you were still making comments when you were making videos when they were displayed. I feel that when it mattered as a commenter, you know, that resonated with me to the point where we started to work together in the way we are right now, only as a result of seeing comments below and go, oh, bloody hell. In seeing, you know, the same avatar that you used to have with the salt planes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, those are fond memories, and I'm sure that there's people. Arwin would be someone who would recognise the same thing. I'm sure Arwin's commented under your comments prior to you being a YouTuber. So you know, I think it hit home where it needed to, and it's a shame that you can't make comments now. But you're concisely putting out presentations right now live. So, yeah.
Yeah, back in the day, man. I think me and you came together over a comment.
Exactly. Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, it was M. Scott Veach that made a number of claims, and I took each one of them claims and just pulverized them.
I don't think so. My introduction to you was prior to that, because you obviously had interactions with cathexis, which predates that.
Right. Oh, yes. Yeah, that's for sure. But I think the thing that I don't know, I was just guessing because it was one of your shows and he was on there and just making stupid comment after stupid comment. And I just.
Hold on. Let me get the violins going.
It was bad for him.
Right. In terms of our interaction, actual direct interaction, that's correct. But
yes.
In terms of me knowing who you were and what you did, it was prior to that. But
yes,
anyway.
Correct. Yep.
Anyway, that's a nice reminiscent. Neil's taking the piss out of us by saying he's going to get the violins and harps as us reminiscing about how we met.
Right. He should. It's an ongoing love story.
I was going to say, it's important to differentiate between when you first met and when you actually fell in love. And there's nothing wrong with that.
There's
I was
nothing
getting
wrong
to
with
that.
Oh, man. Yeah.
All kidding aside, though, I'm glad it happened because
Me too.
the amount of information and just what I learned from you two guys, not blowing smoke up your ass, but I am. It's great.
I agree.
Right, I like Ballbusters too.
I'm neutral. I don't know what would have happened if it wouldn't have happened. So,
Wait, can I reminisce when BallBusters first started? That's a great story. Why don't we get into that one?
Because Huey's trying to round out these are final thoughts, but you know, there we go.
Yeah, these are final thoughts. We got to round out. This show is pretty long, so yeah, you're right. You're correct, Nathan.
What I will say though is, when I hinted jokingly at you moaning about us not making enough penetration, I use that word intentionally. We also describe ourselves as being at the tip of the spear, Neil, don't we? Well, that blade progresses backwards, doesn't it? Well, unfortunately, it only starts getting sharpened at the tip, and all the other analogies that I can give you. How much success we have in terms of the information we disseminate does unfortunately hinge on the rest of the, I can't believe I'm going to say this, community that we have around us, disseminating equally as valid arguments, especially when we're talking about stuff that's not agree, disagree, matter of fact, like celestial navigation, like gas pressure without a container, as opposed to the logical consistency arguments. You know, how those get disseminated throughout time is dependent on, hopefully, people supporting us and telling the other flat earthers around us just how good those arguments are, so that they come along, pick up on them. Now, I do hear, to his credit, Dave Weiss disseminating more and more of the information that we put out in the way we put it out. And obviously he's seen it, picked up on it, taken it out, put it to effect, likes it because it works, and keeps using it. Well, that's the blade getting sharper further down the spear, so to speak.
Yes.
could I ask Nathan just to say the word community again without almost choking?
Yeah, right.
I love it.
The problem is being at the tip of the spear. You got to have a lot of shitty metal smashed off you, haven't you, Adam?
Yeah. But you know what? Now though, it bounces off, doesn't it, with fun now? Because look at the shit that they're smashing it as now. It's. I got Phil tonight. We're talking logical fallacies that it takes apart, and he uses logical fallacies to attack us with, as we're explaining logical fallacies to people, so they can understand the logical fallacies that these numpties use to try and mug them off. They're so far behind. I suppose the correct phrase for them is they're so far behind their curve, aren't they?
Yes.
I'm just enjoying it because look how far they are behind. Look at what we're laughing at. They're 2 steps behind these guys, and the battle's been won. And with the battle won, you can have this fun. Because all they've got is arguing about whether you can have an angle with a curved side or not, or whatever. But none of it relates to the nature, which has already been defined and demonstrated. Yeah, observably, measurably, and as we say now, navigatably flat.
Yep, it's over. All right, Nathan, we want to go down the list quickly. Channel shout-outs, and we're going to wrap it up.
Well, I don't know if Arwin wants to do his channel shout out, then we'll get some words from John, and then Mac65. I know he's on server mute, so he might be listening in the audience. But yeah, hopefully we'll get him back in before we get some channel roundouts. Arwin, go ahead.
Yes, thank you for having me. Wasn't really active too much in the first half of the show because all the food talk and I got really hungry. But yeah, it was interesting once again. We could rename the show Food and Fallacies. But anyway, yeah, my channel ARWIGN. I have a Flat Earth Early Bird show. It's going for a very long time. Every day, 1 p.m. Amsterdam time in the weekdays, 2 p.m. in the weekend. And yeah, interact with chat a lot. So please come and visit and yeah, let's have a chat. Thanks for having me, John.
John, the other John, father of a storm child. Mac's still on server mute/Stefan. Neil, did you want to add any final thoughts?
I hate the freaking Pittsburgh Penguins. All the Rangers had to do was win this game and they'd be in first place.
Alrighty then. Rams, do you want to add anything to the show?
No, just that I appreciate the fallacies are a foundation of this argument, and to understand them well is important. And I think QE's done a good job today. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Adam, did you want to shout anything out or add any final thoughts?
I think there's a lot of stuff that gets you guile, isn't there? But I think as Neil's highlighted, those bastard Pittsburgh Penguins.
No idea what that means.
Hockey.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Big fat, they
Don't tell me. No.
Neither did I, Nathan. Neither did I.
Well, I know QE's from Pittsburgh because he's a Steeler fan.
And
Penguins just beat the Rangers 1-0.
it'll be okay.
Yeah, that 10 grand you put on it.
Anyway, I didn't get a chance to say great show, QE. A lot of information. My grandson's birthday party today. Adam, did I hear you say it's your son's birthday? Is it the actual day? Or you just celebrate?
Not today. No, couple of days, but it's the weekend, so family's down. It was. Yeah. He's going to be a big 15, really big 15. He's the biggest person in the house, proper unit. So yes, if I get the chance, I'd just like to say, yeah, Archie, bro, happy birthday,
Nope.
son.
Milkmen have good genes.
He's got loads of nice, good genes.
Thanks, Adam.
Levi's, Calvin Klein's.
Thanks, Adam.
Oh, sorry.
Did we hear from Truth Seeker?
Hey guys, great show as always. It was definitely needed, especially for myself to go over these logical fallacies. Sometimes sometimes it's needed. Actually, a lot of times it's needed, especially recently from some of the arguments that we hear from many of these ballarders. Just a great show. Shout out to you, QE, for having a good show as always. Nathan, Arwen, Adam, everyone else, Neil. I just wanted to add a suggestion. Hopefully, in the future, if we can do like a show or a segment on some of the arguments, some of the weaker arguments, or some of the arguments that shouldn't be mentioned when trying to prove flat Earth, as we mentioned earlier.
That's interesting. I haven't thought about that.
Good idea. Yeah, I did say earlier about crap arguments from 2015, and that was kind of what my theme in terms of talking about sharpening up the spear was about. Exactly, Truth Seeker. Yeah, definitely. So horizon rising to eye level, seeing too far, etc., etc. Is that what you mean? Those are the arguments that should not be mentioned. Is that what you mean?
Exactly. Unfortunately, you see, other people, and not to throw holes into them. They have done a good job, bringing out flat Earth to a lot of people, but at the same time, it doesn't really make a good case for us if we repeat those same arguments, like you said about horizon rising above the eye level, water always remaining in its level, etc. So
there's nothing wrong with the water level argument, other than it's not much to go on. And yeah, I know exactly what you mean, and I totally agree. I think that's an excellent idea. I hadn't thought about it either, and judging by QE's reaction, neither had he, and he's like, yeah, good idea.
Yeah, it is a really, really, really good idea. I think Nathan should do it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a theme of this week's Flat Earth debate for sure. Shout out to Thea Megawerty. Says, how many shared tangents does a curved adjacent have?
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Right on time.
Truth Seeker, go ahead.
No, I have nothing else to add. It was, like I said, good show as always.
It's a really good point what you said there. I think for some of us, that journey started a while ago. Is attack your own argument, and I'm not having a go at Eric Debay. But Eric Debay's however many hundred proofs. It's a great place to start. Certainly, something I did was to attack our own argument. The railway arguments, etc. There's nothing wrong with that, because if you can refine what you should and you shouldn't use, and what you can disprove yourself, then you should dump it in the bin. And I would say that's probably the best place to start, is to go through them and say, is it valid, is it not valid? Because it's an old argument. It's not an attack on Eric Debay, but there's things in there that I know that are... there's stuff I know I wouldn't use because I couldn't prove. And there's stuff I know I definitely wouldn't use because I know it's actually wrong, as well as, not useful. So I think that's a really good place for us to be at, actually, is to refine our own argument instead of worrying about the...
Okay.
Maybe hold on a second, Nathan. Maybe we could do a more, I don't want to say free for all, but have like an open panel or somebody with that as the topic, and have those topics be brought up and then talked through. I don't know. Maybe that might be a little bit too hairy-carry about it, not concise.
I think that's a good idea. But that will be something that I'll preface it over the following, the upcoming week. I'll say, as it's a bit thin on the ground in terms of globers coming or anti-flat earthers coming to argue the globe, feel free to come on if you feel these are great arguments that should be, kept at the forefront of the flat Earth discussion. Feel free to come on and discuss them and put forth your reasoning and have yourself ripped a new asshole by me in the most polite way in terms of why they're not, because they're 2015 arguments, we call them, and hopefully they'll get a new term at the end of this process. But addressing crap arguments. One thing I will say, Adam, and this is very much in line with me saying, metaphorically speaking, to be at the tip of the spear, you've had a lot of metal smashed and scraped off you. Yeah, I think it might be a good idea not to specifically reference Eric Dubay in terms of when we're pulling apart those arguments, whatever they may be. I'm just going on past experience and how financially it crippled me last time I did it with Bob Nodell. Just saying.
Yeah, we're not into the business of, except for the numpty dipshits, of personal attacks. We wanted to focus on the arguments and then dismantle them.
Did I not distinguish that point? I think I was quite clear. That was a pioneering piece, yeah? Something that I've looked at and have arguments with. And if you're going to use something to reference, it's a compliment I'm talking about. If you're going to use something to reference all the arguments that are there, well, there's nothing better than Eric Dubay's summary there. And let's not be disingenuous. I like Eric Dubay, but he's not God. He's not correct in anything. And more fundamentally in those proofs, they're not his. Yeah? They're a collation of stuff that he put together at that time. And I don't think he would ascribe to them all now. But the point I was making was that I think is a great list to go through, put a tick or a cross next to. And none of that, whether it's got a tick or a cross, I think has an indictment on Eric Dubay. Please don't hurt me, Dave Weiss or Mr. Eric Dubay.
Indeed. All hail Eric Dubay. We love Eric.
Take us home, sir.
That I'm going to say, first and foremost, obviously a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who tuned in live on the Quantum Eraser YouTube channel and for smashing the super chat, joining as a member, hitting the PayPal link, all that good stuff. Also, another massive thank you to today's Ballbuster panel and the odd couple of people who joined from the public platform part of Discord to make this public section of the show possible right at the end. I've been Nathan Oakley. I've also put a link into the most recent Flat Earth debate. The show's got cut up slightly last week through technical issues, so there's it's already published in full, but Flat Earth Debate Uncut 1598, which was formerly members only, is now released on my second channel, so be here or be sphere. As I say, I have put a link in Quantum Eraser's channel. We will see you all in the next Ballbusters.